you have seconds on that one, Cari? Call to order. The Board of Selectmen's meeting for Monday, February 28th, 2001, 7 p.m. This meeting is being videotaped. Welcome everyone who is here. I'd like to ask Tim Bodette, a newly anointed Eagle Scout, to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tim, we wanted to congratulate you
Thank you.
on your Eagle Scout anointment. And what did you do as your project?
I built a garden at St. Mary's Church.
Mm-hmm.
It's currently next to the Parish Center. Long time to build.
How long?
We did it in a course of 2 weeks. We did it Saturday and Sunday for about 2 hours each. Got a lot of help from the younger scouts, so great.
Great. Excellent. Well, congratulations. I know that your ceremony was a while ago, but I know that also this was the first time that we could actually get schedules coordinated since you are on the Uxbridge varsity, boys basketball varsity team, which won the Clark tournament on Saturday. Congratulations to that as well. It was a nail biter, I'll tell you, 54-50.
Close, too close.
It was close. Exactly. Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments for Tim?
Just what year are you?
Junior.
He's a junior.
Junior.
Yep.
Oh, very good. Great accomplishment.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Most
Thank you very
definitely.
much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Does anyone have any announcements?
Yes. When I'm in the supermarket, I'm stopped frequently by people with a question as to whether we're going to close the senior center. And as you know, we have no plans to close the senior center, and there are no plans to reduce the hours of the senior center. So I make sure everyone understands that.
Okay. Any other announcements? No? Going once, going twice? Since we have quite a few people in the audience, which is nice to see, those that are here for Citizens Forum, if you could raise your hand. Okay, we have 2 people. All right. Great, I just want to get an idea, because usually we limit the time of this, but if you want to go ahead and start, please. You're welcome.
Good evening. My name is Harolyn Thiemke, and the residence is 20 Hitchin Post Lane. I'm here to address the proposed cuts to the Uxbridge Senior Center. My mom is 88 years old, and she goes to the center Monday through Friday. It isn't just a place for a nutritious lunch or even to socialize. This is my mom's community. As a former crisis intervention social worker for over 24 years at Tri-Valley Elder Services, I can verify the most debilitating mental health issue for the elderly is depression. The basic remedy for depression is a supportive community and caring individuals. Both of these assets are present at the Uxbridge Senior Center. In addition, the Senior Center provides transportation to elders who would be homebound if this was not available. There are 2,000 seniors presently in Uxbridge out of a population of 13,000, which is 15% of the population. However, when services are reduced for elders, extended working families are impacted. For example, full-time working sons and daughters, which would increase the percentage of that population affected. Seniors have contributed taxes to the town of Uxbridge for several years. In some cases, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. These elders have fought in World War II, the Korean War, and the war in Vietnam. These seniors support local businesses. They buy their medications at CVS. They buy their food at Hannaford's. They spend money at McDonald's and Koopmans. And these seniors vote. These cuts disproportionately are targeting the most frail and vulnerable of Uxbridge citizens. They are unacceptable and immoral.
Thank you. Would you like to come up and speak?
Good evening. My name is Jackie Norberg, and I live on Landry Lane in Uxbridge, Mass. I wanted to come here tonight to just try to talk to the Board of Selectmen and try to get some idea of Landry Lane and how the board feels Landry Lane should be acted upon as of now. I made a couple of copies for you, which we have asked the town, after the litigation, which most of you do know, we have sued the town of Uxbridge for Landry Lane to see if it was a public or a private road. We have received the judgment September of last year. After that, our lawyer had sent the town a letter. Please let us know, are you maintaining the road and taking care of it as the judgment ordered? So naive to us that live on Landry Lane, we assumed, because we got the judgment and it says Landry Lane is now considered a public road, we assumed the town would continue maintaining Landry Lane as it had in the previous years, meaning 2008, 2009. They've always plowed, sanded the road for many years. Well, the first storm came, and unfortunately, there was no plow. So needless to say, we needed to pay to get our road plowed. It was $90 each storm. As we all know, we had many storms this year. The first storm we got was on 12/28. The following week, my neighbor, Lisa Nestor, called the town manager and asked him, what's going on with the road? Can we get something in writing? What's going on? Needless to say, we got nothing. On January 20th, I came in and met with the town manager again. Same questions asked. What's going on with our road? We have the judgment. You've received the judgment. You've got it from Town Counsel. I've got it from my lawyer. His response to me was his opinion, it was a private road. But he would contact Town Counsel to get their opinion. That was on January 20th. On February 7th, I came down again, asked him the same question. Have you contacted or got in touch with Town Counsel to get an answer? Because that's what he told me we were waiting for. No, have not heard back from Town Counsel. On February 16th, I went to the office. I got the same answer again. Have you, and I asked them every time, have you talked to Town Counsel? No, I have not. February 24th, I called, talked to Tracy, left a message. Can you please have Mike call me so I can get something in writing saying town's going to maintain it, town's not, what is going on? I received no phone call back. Now this morning, I called again and I asked Tracy to have him call me because our road, as you all know, it snowed, then the rain, so our road was glare ice. So Mike did call me back the first time. Since I've been contacting him, I got some type of an answer. And I asked him about sanding and salting Landry Lane. I explained to him it was all glare ice. And he says, well, it's not fit for town vehicles to go down. And I said, well, I'm not asking you to plow it. I'm asking you to sand and salt it. That's all I'm asking, because it's glare ice. No. My opinion is it is a private road. So now I'm here asking, I didn't understand any of this. And I specifically asked Mike. I said, Mike, do you recall the Superior Court ruling we got from Judge Tucker in September of 2010, which specifically states Landry Lane is now a public road? And I asked him, are you willing to ignore Judge Tucker's decision. And his answer was, my opinion is that it's a private road. So now I'm asking the board, what I asked for, Lisa asked for, we've been going on since the first storm that we assumed the town was going to maintain the road, is what is going on with our road? Why isn't the town maintaining it? We have had to incur the expense all winter long to get 4 people off to work every day. We have 5 children in the school system. We can't call the school and say, I'm sorry, we can't get out of our road. So we had to pay somebody to come and take care of our road. We had no choice.
Is it true that this is in appeal process?
Well, you see, it is an appeal process. The difference is the town of Uxbridge did not appeal this. When we went to court, it was the town of Uxbridge and against the Stefanic's.
Correct. We've never been named, correct.
Right. The town of Uxbridge did not appeal this. Only the Stefanic's individually, which I have that paperwork here if you'd like a copy of that also, which I also offered to Mike.
But it's still an appeal process, that's correct.
It's still an appeal
That's not-
process, yeah?
I spoke to Town Council, that's not true. We did file an appearance on the appeal, and Town Council says the town will be joining in the appeal brief for the other side.
And how long have we been in the appeal brief? Approximately? What
Well,
month?
we're not filing a separate brief, we're simply joining in their brief when they file it.
Do we know when we started filing with,
Whenever the appeal period was, we
We joined
filed
in.
a notice of appearance.
okay, so we're in appeal process?
No, that is not true. I have the copies of the letter
Well-
here, and the appeal is individually.
Well, until the appeal, and
This
this is
is
my
what-
opinion,
this is what
until
Town
the
Council
appeal
told
is
me today.
settled, it's a continued lawsuit. It's an appeal process.
So what I would like, and what I've asked him more than once, is I would like some type of a letter, something just saying the town's going to maintain it, the town's not going to maintain it, what is our position? You cannot just leave a road after so many years and not maintain it and think everything is going to be okay. You have potholes, you have sticks down, you have trees down. We can't call the town because town won't take care of it. Legally, under the lawsuit, I can't touch it because it's public road.
Because unfortunately, this isn't an agenda item for us, and you just came before to speak to us in Citizens Forum, we can't take any action on it right
No,
now.
that's
To say, you know, whether or not
No,
there
that,
should be a letter, but I just want to make you aware of that, and we can put you on the agenda for the next meeting.
yep, that will be fine, and I can give you these copies. I made copies for all of you. Just our letter basically asking the town's position in September, which still, as of today, we've gotten nothing in return.
If
Okay.
you can get that information to Tracy so she can, thank you, send it to us.
All right, and then, yes, I would like to be on the next agenda.
Okay.
All right,
so we can do
thank
that.
you.
I want to make sure we all understand what the issue is here. It's my recollection that the Board of Selectmen made a determination that it was a public road. The other party contested that in court. So the town's position was that it's a public road. Somebody else went to court naming this lady and the town as defendants, contesting that decision, contesting our contention, the Board of Selectmen's decision it was a public road. The board's decision was upheld. So now you're telling me that Town Council is going to argue against the position maintained by the town? Or am I missing something?
Pat has told me consistently that we were on the Stefanik side of the lawsuit.
No. And I mentioned that to you when we first
Well,
talked
that's
about
why
it.
I asked him about it today, and I said, well, and I said,
Well, keep in
Selectman
mind, now,
Baghdasarian,
they weren't town council when this thing was done. This was done, this goes
Okay.
back a long time. And the board had a hearing, we took evidence, we listened to all the sides. And unless my memory fails me, I think we decided unanimously that it was a public road by prescription. So the town's position is that it's a public road. It went to court. The court upheld the town's position. So what are we appealing?
Why would we be?
Well, I will tell you my discussion with town council.
Okay.
Because I cited what you said.
Yeah.
And he said, well, for one thing, we don't have a record of that, and I told him that, and we don't, because we don't have selectmen's records. You have the selectmen's record, okay? We don't. I would like a copy, because at least we'll have something for that period. But, and I'll send it to town council, but notwithstanding that, he represented that we were on the other side of the lawsuit. That
Who
we
did?
had- Town council did, that we were.
In all of our
certainly-
briefs,
Not aware of that.
in all of our briefs,
All our briefs were.
One, it said, Board of Selectmen
Sorry,
voted.
Jackie, could you step closer to the
Oh,
microphone
sorry.
again so people at home can hear you? Thank you.
The
Can you
Board of
just
Selectmen voted not conduct an extensive or formal review of Landry Lane. Landry Lane is to be considered and treated as any other public way in the town of Uxbridge. This is just one. I have about 13 of these over the years.
What's the date of that one?
This one is 1997.
Okay.
That was just one quick one I found. But I have over 13 different letters through many years, which I can bring down and I can copy for Tracy. And yes, it was the town's position, just so give a little bit of background, it was the town's position, as Peter did state, that Landry Lane, the selectmen said Landry Lane, every time we brought it up, was a town road. What happened was in the litigation was we said it was the town road, the town said it was a town road. The other party said, no, we think it's a public road,
private, you mean?
private.
Private.
I'm sorry. So what happened was they came into they talked to somebody, and I don't know who, and I have no idea, and what they asked was that, could the town's name be on the lawsuit with them, as long as they paid town council? So there was no interest from any of you to any answer of yes or no, or could you have something to do with this lawsuit? It was they paid town council basically to use the town of Uxbridge names on the lawsuit. The appeal has been sent in without the town's name on it, because I think it's also another expense that the Stefanicks would have to pay to add the town of Uxbridge names on the appeal. The appeal has already been sent in. The appeal process has already been started.
I understand that, and I
Right.
think that because this is citizens forum, if you agree,
Mhm.
that we'll discuss this
Right,
at a
Right.
future date.
which is fine, but
But
I will
just to
give you.
clarify, if there's a lawsuit that's going on and it's in the appeal process, here's the situation. If the higher court reverses the lower court's decision and the town has taken any action on this property that is then deemed private property, there's an issue with that. So, that's why my position is, this is in the courts right now. It's an appeal process. Yes, there is a decision from the lower court, but until the higher courts have determined that the lower court shall stand, this is a continuing lawsuit, which the
Right.
town needs to tread lightly, because higher courts have been known to overturn the decision of lower courts.
Which I
Which
understand.
then this would be
Right.
private property, and that's a whole nother ballgame.
Which I understand, but as of right now, with the judgment we have, they said it was private, and the town said,
I know.
you need to prove that it's public. We proved that it was public when we went to court. We proved that it was public. So now, and
It's still
and
continuing.
that's
But
what
it
I,
was the town's
that's,
position
Right.
that it's a public road. And
Right.
the court has affirmed that position. So by what logic would we jump to the other side? It doesn't make sense. I
No,
will
it
tell you that we did not want to make it a public road. We knew the condition, we knew all those issues.
Yep.
But we made a decision based on the historical facts. And that's what it was. It wasn't that we said, oh boy, we want to make this a public road. We did not want to make it a public road. But our decision was based on the factual evidence that was presented.
But somewhere in it, we became a party to
Well, we were a
decide
party because-
representing it was a private road.
I don't know how that came about.
I don't either. That
I mean, from
happened
my
prior to
time on the
being here.
board, we have always been representing it was a private way. Now, your time precedes me, and I understand that, and somewhere in that, but since I've been on the board, we've always been in the position it's a private way.
Well, let's hope that the paperwork that you have will help fill in some of the blanks for us, and we'll put you on the agenda for our next
I have
meeting.
plenty. I'll bring you down some paperwork.
You can find copies of the original decisions from the board.
Oh, I have the judgment.
Okay. No, I don't mean the judgment. No,
not
the
judgment.
board's vote.
Oh, yes, I have those.
Okay.
The-
Because
the-
that's what
from
we
the town
need.
of from the Board of
Board
Selectmen.
of Selectmen.
Yes, I have many of those. I think I have about 13 of them over the years.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I
Alright.
have about 13
I think
of
that's
them.
fine.
Okay. Yeah, I have plenty.
All right. Anyone else here for Citizens Forum? No? Okay. Let's open the public hearing. Correct? We'll open the public hearing for the new alcohol license application, GA Restaurant Incorporated, 785 Quaker Highway. Attorney Wickstrom?
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman Pittman, members of the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Town Manager. This is the application for an all-alcohol beverage license to be served on the premises at a new restaurant operated by GA Restaurant, Inc. And it's at 785 Quaker Highway, which is the site of the former Oyster Cabin restaurant. And other than what we've submitted in the application, I don't know if the board has any specific questions. The applicants submitted everything that's required by the state form. They intend on operating, obviously, an Italian restaurant and serve alcohol as one of their fares. Mr. DeFalco is here tonight. And also the landlord of the premises is here, if you have any specific questions for them. As you can see in the application, he's already made a substantial investment into the property and is ready to open his doors as soon as the license is approved.
Have they gone through all of the necessary
It's all been,
inspections with fire department and?
I have a question. Among the things that the applicant needs to submit is a statement of all the monies they've spent to refurbish the restaurant and so forth. And I'm looking at one item particularly, $2.68 was spent at Lowell's to buy something or other. And it goes on and on and on, list after list. Now, can anyone enlighten me onto why the ABCC, the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission, has to have a list of every penny spent in refurbishing a restaurant?
No idea.
It is an absolutely worthless state agency. But it's worse than worthless, because a lot of money is spent and time is spent by people complying with these regulations. For what purpose? Is there somebody in Boston that's gonna say, no, you should have spent $3.62 instead of $2.68 for those materials? I think not.
I think maybe we can get our state representatives to help address that.
Well, if
You
you
know-
recall, Beth, some time ago, after the fall elections, I suggested that we have a talk here with our new state reps and our senator, and bring some of these things to his attention. Because the economy suffers, business suffers, people suffer when we put organizations through this for no purpose whatsoever. And it's a lot of wasted paper and time and money and effort and energy, and it's nonsense.
I would bet, this is just a guess, that that goes back to the prohibition years that was probably placed on, and it's a way to ensure that it was set up as a legitimate business and that it was not a shell company that was created just to get a license to sell liquor without the intent to actually establish an establishment. You know, I would imagine you have to show that you put money into it, and that's one way that they ask for it with a
Well,
regulation.
Well, I don't
if
think
we
that it's
accept that,
necessarily
I think
appropriate for
what-
us to speculate on this. I think we should just focus on making
He
the.
raised the issue, so.
I know, I appreciate that,
The
but
one question I did
Move
wanna
it forward.
raise is the hours of operation.
Yeah, I can see that.
I didn't see that anywhere in here. When do they intend to use the alcohol license?
That would be, I don't think the state asks for that particular information.
It was on our
We do, though.
application.
Yeah,
We
we
had
do.
it on our.
Okay.
Standard state hours that,
Well, because the only reason why I raise it is because when we had the application originally
yeah.
for the previous business, the hours of operation they were asking for was different than we were allowing in town as a general rule. That's why, and on our
Bylaw.
application, they actually filled it in, but I don't see our application in this whole packet.
They haven't-
Yeah,
they
this,
haven't changed the application.
the application form has been, the town application form was replaced by the state application form, believe it or not, so, but my client tells me that he'd like the hours to be noon to 1,
Noon
Oh,
to one.
that's fine,
Okay.
that's fine.
noon to 1 AM, that is. And just in case the ABC is watching, we disagree with Mr. Bagdasarian's,
Spoken like a true attorney, cover all bases. However, if what my colleague here suggests is some justification for this, that there's some real need to know that they actually spent $2.68 at Lowell's, then we should send someone to look, and I want to see that $2, whatever it was that was purchased. It doesn't make any sense.
I
It-
agree.
It is a tremendous waste of money, and
268.
buckling under to these agencies, it won't harm you in any way to agree to what you know to be the case. It is just a home for relatives of politicians. That's all it is. And there's been talk about getting rid of it for years and years. But politicians want to have a place to send their brother-in-laws and cousins and so forth.
I'm aware of a case, and I think this is why they have it. I'm aware of a case about 5 years ago in Chicopee where they actually looked into the sources of funding and found that organized crime was involved. And that's why they asked for the sources of funding. Because sometimes they'll see an investment of several $1 million in a business for someone who doesn't have any discernible source of income.
Okay,
I'm
enough
sure they
discussion,
filed
please.
these things.
Enough discussion. I
Even
appreciate that.
though there was
Motion.
underworld money involved.
I'm sorry, Diana,
The
what else?
underworld is very adept at meeting all the regulatory requirements. They're very, very smart people.
Okay, I'm gonna close the public hearing. And I'll
Motion to
entertain,
grant the license as applied for with hours of
12
12
p.m.
p.m. to 1 a.m.
Second,
all those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
thank you,
Good luck.
thank you.
Congratulations, good luck. Let us know when you open.
When are you officially opening?
Yeah,
Well, I'm not sure how long.
soon?
Soon as, I hope the state is as quick as the board.
You're
Do
welcome.
not have a grand opening until you've been open a couple of weeks to work out all the bugs.
All the
please.
kinks.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, good
You're
luck.
welcome. Good luck.
Okay, since we do have quite a few people here in the audience, I'd like to suggest to the board that we move to address under old business, letter C, discuss action fiscal year 2012 budget.
Can we do Cedar Woods first?
Cedar Woods.
We can certainly do, so I thought, okay. Cedar Woods first?
That'd be
Attorney Knappich? You're welcome.
Paying a retainer on that term.
Oh, thank you, good point.
Good evening.
Good
Madam
evening.
Chairman, members of the board, and thank you for the opportunity to be before you again. I'm Rob Knappich for the residents of Cedar Woods, and if you recall, when we were last before you, it was to further discuss the problem of how to make the Cedar Woods roadways public ways, and at that meeting, there was extensive discussion focused mainly on how to protect the town's interest in the unlikely event that any party, such as the Cedar Woods mortgagees, were to sue the town within the 3-year statute of limitations for damages as a result of the town taking the roadways. You gave some indication that if the residents were willing to indemnify the town for any loss that the town might suffer as a result of such a lawsuit, then you would likely be willing to exercise the town's power of eminent domain to take the roadways. And I indicated that, although I could not at that moment confirm that the residents were willing to so indemnify the town because the question had not arisen until that meeting, I agreed to ask the residents if they would be willing to indemnify the town and report back to you. Thereafter, I prepared a document, a memorandum of agreement, that was signed by each of the residents that does confirm that they collectively agree to indemnify the town for any loss that the town might suffer as a result of a lawsuit arising from the eminent domain proceedings. I submitted that to the town manager's office, and last week I did receive communication from Town Counsel that recommended some revisions to the document, and I reported to Town Counsel. I discussed it with him briefly last Friday and reported to him that I could recommend to the residents that they accept the suggested revisions, save for one, which involves a recommendation that the agreement be recorded. So we're here this evening in the hope that, we finally come to a point where the town can be comfortable that its interest is protected and its risk is minimized in the event that there is such a lawsuit, and that you'll soon embark upon the steps necessary to begin the process of taking the roadways.
Okay, thank you. Mike, do you have an update to share with us? from-
Yes, I spoke to Town Council. The one thing that you were concerned about was indeed the record. The one thing that you were concerned about was indeed the recordation, and the point you made, I think, was well taken, and he understood your concern that it would appear in the chain of title essentially forever, whereas this is really something that would expire within 3 years as a concern. So he said he could. I think he used the term "I can live with the way it was decided without the recordation."
Okay.
So he's not insistent upon it.
Okay, so what you're saying is there's not an intent to file on the deeds?
That would be that was the concern that you expressed, that it not be recorded because it would follow the chain of title. The assumption that there wouldn't be much turnover in the property within 3 years.
But if the property is turned over within 3 years, then it's not enforceable to the next parties, correct? Unless
Correct.
it's recorded on the deeds.
Correct.
So therefore, I don't see how the town's interests are.
It's enforceable against the individuals.
It
Only
is.
the individuals that
That's
sign the
correct.
agreement, not transference.
that's
It's
correct.
only
It-
upon
it wouldn't run with
transference
the land.
if it's effective, if it runs
Correct, it
concurrent
wouldn't
with
run
the
with the land.
deeds. Which, at the time of the expiration of a 3-year period, then the deeds you could have a filing to remove it from the deeds in 3 years. But I think it's important that it be on the deeds for those 3-year periods. A house could turn over once a year.
Well, once it's recorded, they won't remove it from
That's
the
right.
re-
It
from
stays
the,
there forever.
registry. It stays there. But
But two parties can agree, I mean, it may stay there, but two parties can agree that it's no longer in effect. it would always stay at the registry.
Once it's recorded, it's
But two
recorded.
parties can agree that it is
Right.
no longer no longer bound to the property at the expiration of 3 years.
Right, but even with that agreement, that document would remain in the chain of title forevermore. That it would, and it
what's
would
the
create
issue with that?
undue and unnecessary confusion. But a couple of things. First, you're right, that the property could transfer, but Mr. Bagdasarian makes a good point. It's still binding on the signatories to that. It could
Only
be
the
made
signatories, but
binding
not
on their
the-
successors and assigns. And in addition, the way it's structured, and as the residents have agreed, they collectively agree to indemnify the town, so that in the event that any one mortgagee should sue the town, they're all responsible collectively to indemnify the town for that loss. So it's not like if owner A sells their property and moves, and that mortgagee happens to sue the town, that you have to go find owner A in, Florida or something. So,
So
in
the
light of,
owners understand that if 10 of those properties sell, the remaining 5 could be held holding the costs.
yes, in the vastly improbable event that 10 of those houses sell in the next 5 years, then that's theoretically possible.
And that in itself is evidence of how little likelihood they feel there is to any adverse consequence. Because if they thought that was a likely occurrence, then they wouldn't agree to be
Take the-
jointly and severally liable.
The risk. Mhm.
No, what happens if somebody defaults on their loan?
It becomes a mortgage company and they're not responsible, that's what we're talking about.
No, that's,
They default on the loan, they're no longer a party to it, it's owned by the mortgage company,
the rest
and
of the people
now
have to pay.
the remaining have to pick up that person's share,
well,
Wait a minute now.
because they're no longer the owner.
Well, they're not picking up the share of the mortgage.
If the, in fact, that they're sued, no,
Okay.
right,
Of the
right,
lawsuit.
right,
Of the
there's a
lawsuit,
lawsuit,
right.
correct, right.
Their individual liability isn't tied to ownership of the property. I think that's the simplest way I can put it.
my only problem with this is, it's been my problem from the start. We're gonna set a precedent here. I know you don't agree with me, but I've already had, at 6:30, I had a meeting in Lower Town Hall with somebody. They already wanna do this, and we haven't done this yet. There's another
Well,
street that
that's-
wants to do this already.
Right, because it's a good way out of the problem. It's an efficient and effective way out of the problem. And in fact, Town Council's email says the following: where the fee interest in the layout is unclear, or, as in this case, owned by multiple parties or abutters, acquisition of the legal interest in the way is best achieved by eminent domain taking per Chapter 79 to assure acquisition of a legally sound interest in the property. It's your own attorney's words, that in cases such as these, this is the best way to solve the problem.
If I try some new kind of food, and gee, it tastes good, and then later I try the same thing, it might be a precedent, but so what? It tastes good. I mean, I'm not afraid of a precedent if it makes sense to do it. But it's not a binding precedent. We have the right to make individual decisions based on the facts and circumstances of each individual case.
Well,
I
first of
understand
all,
that.
let's back up, it's not the board's decision, because this is a town meeting vote to do it by taking. So everybody understands, the board, it's not our decision.
You start
It will
the
be going to
process.
town meeting.
We start the process.
You begin the
now.
process by voting your intent to lay out the roadway.
Correct, but,
But you're right.
the road would have to be accepted first by
That's
taking,
correct.
and then if that failed, then the intent would not go forward.
That's right. That your action, although critical and a necessary first step, is not the be-all and the end-all of it.
Right, just so everybody understands, this is not a decision the board is making, this is the decision town meeting will be making.
Any other questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion.
At this time, there wouldn't be necessary for a motion because it's a matter of, this is gonna be
Endorsing it?
related to a warrant article.
But our decision to lay out is separate and distinct from the article.
But also town meeting, the town council also suggests that we don't do any layout until we have an idea of the costs that are associated with this. So therefore, we would not be doing a layout at this point because, unless you have cost figures associated with this, okay?
We provided an estimate of the cost for the legal work at the town manager's request. But I may make a suggestion. It may not be appropriate to take action this moment for a couple of reasons. You probably want to confer with town council. He may be able to give you the specific form of vote or motion, which has to comply strictly with, statutory requirements. And in addition, for our part, we received, as I mentioned, the word, last week that town council recommended certain revisions to the agreement that was signed by the residents. And, we haven't gotten confirmation from each of the residents that they will agree to it. We believe they will because we don't think that the language meaningfully increases any risk that the agreement puts upon them. But for our part, it would perhaps be better to have confirmation from each of the residents before you took a formal vote of intent to lay out the roadway.
Mike, a question, in the language, I believe one of the questions that they were looking to is within the parties that this document, although, under the feeling if we're going to step away from the recording on the deed, that it applies to the assigns, heirs, that language is still remaining in the document, is that correct?
It's not in the document presently, no.
The document that the residents are signing? My thought is this, if any one of the residents decides to set up a trust, are they, in a sense, then knocking themselves out of the whole thing?
No, because again, their obligation isn't tied to ownership of the property. They've signed an agreement that says that they'll indemnify the town. It's a personal obligation of each of the signatories. I don't think town council would interpret it in any other way but that.
Right, I'm just, my thought is to protect the other residents on the street also in this, not only protecting the town, but just for the residents to think about that if your neighbor signs this and says, I'm making myself responsible, and then a week later goes down and puts their property into a living trust, where the property now is not personally owned by them, it's owned by a trust, are they now responsible if a lawsuit comes forward
Yes,
under the documents?
because they signed it individually, yes. So I guess I would ask that you withhold action until you get some specific guidance from town council and our confirmation that each of the residents agrees to the requested revisions, which I think will be forthcoming and probably ready for you to take action at your next meeting.
Okay.
Okay?
Don't you want some indication of the feeling of the board, so that you won't go do a lot of work?
That would
only
be
to come
appreciated.
back
Sure.
and we say, oh, well, we don't like it?
Mm-hmm.
As far as I'm concerned, I think the town's interest is adequately protected. I don't think the risk is meaningful in any measure, and I think that we have a interest in having this road and other roads made public roads.
I agree.
I'll wait until I see the
All
documents.
right,
Oh, wait,
you wait what?
till I see the document.
That's not the question. I mean,
I have no comment. How's that?
what is it that you don't have a comment
I
on?
don't have any comment about it. I don't have to comment if I don't want to.
That's absolutely correct. I just wonder what the meaning of no comment is.
That's,
Withholding your opinion for now?
that's right. No comment.
We will be opening the warrant this evening and closing it. So if the intent is to have warrant articles prepared for the spring town meeting.
Setting the dates for it.
We're setting the dates.
Setting the dates.
Oh, we're not gonna do the date that it's gonna close on?
Yeah, you're opening.
Yeah.
Yes, right, that's what I'm saying, we're
Opening,
opening and we're
closing
gonna do
dates.
setting the closing date. What's the closing date that we're looking at?
3/11.
3/11, okay. So, you wanna keep that in mind as far as,
The warrant closes May 11th, or the meeting is May 11th?
the meeting is in May, the warrant will be closing on March 11th? On March 11th.
March
So
11th, okay,
I raised that because
right. That's,
we're gonna have to have all the documents finalized before March 11th if the intent is for
correct.
the Board of Selectmen to lay out the road as one of the warrant articles.
That seems unlikely, I think we can all agree. The legal documents can probably be prepared, but they're drafted in large part on final survey plans, the roadway layout with the meets and bounds of the roadway.
Right, which, that generally falls further along,
Well, that's a
but
good point, right. So you
No,
could put it
don't-
on the, okay, so you could put it on the warrant, but with the assumption that you not necessarily receive all the final documents until until after March 11th.
correct, we have a date,
Yeah, at this
What is
point,
it,
all the
3 weeks
documents will be
prior?
preliminary. All preliminary documents at this point.
Okay,
right?
You should ask Ben.
Okay.
Finalization is what, how, there's another date, so many weeks
Just a couple
prior to
weeks
town
before
meeting,
town meeting.
that everything has to be finalized,
mm-hmm. Okay,
if the board intends to go back to its original
I'll have to revisit what the eminent domain statute says about the prerequisites for just getting it on the warrant, to see if we can,
Would you like to draft the article?
sure,
Okay.
yeah, we can do that. Okay,
Is the only question, Mike, you had? Ben? Is there a time frame that you need to receive documents by, prior to the spring annual town meeting?
I would say as long as it's in line with the procedure that's in place, that should be more than sufficient.
Okay,
The sooner the better.
of course. All right. Okay.
And actually, draft documents are in for the acceptance plans and the as-bills. I'll be coordinating with Andrews on finalizing those.
Excellent. Thank you.
Was there any additional road work that had to be done to that street?
No, there was, but it was completed.
There was an easement issue, wasn't there? Is it an easement?
No, the only thing that's outstanding is we're waiting to basically the snow to clear to check on the condition of the Giacomo Way cul-de-sac. They did some paving there. We want to make sure that there's gonna be no issues going forward with that pavement unraveling. So that's where we're at. All the construction work has been done. It's been inspected, so we're just waiting to, follow up on that just to make sure everything's okay. Because at the time that they did it, we were pushing the limits of the weather with some equipment issues. We just want to make sure that it's going to hold. So that's the only outstanding issue at the present time.
Thank you. All right,
all set?
all set?
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thanks very
you.
much.
Now, if the board pleases, we'll move on to old business discussion action, fiscal year 2012 budget. I would like to preface this discussion by saying that David prepared information for us that was asked for at our last meeting. And the senior center as well as the library did provide information back to us in regard to what the effects would be. However, I feel that for this board, with the absence of Jay, that it would be inappropriate for us to have this discussion any further without a full board, because it is a very sensitive matter. I also don't feel that we've necessarily vetted out what the entire impact would be if this were to pass, of what the services would be that would be eliminated to
If what
the
would
residents. If we agreed to any of these combinations of changing the budget as per David's letter to us from February 23rd.
Well, if you read David's memo,
Mhm.
the point he makes is that the kind of discussion that's anticipated would normally be done back in October or November, which you may recall is a time that I said, we gotta get working on the budget. And you said, we're going to, but of course, we're not going to. So we have an issue. As far as putting something off because a member is absent, members will be absent from time to time. And we can't put off everything because one of us isn't here.
No, but I've had conversations and emails with Jay and while he's in China now.
Yeah.
And what I'd like to propose for the board is to have a meeting on, a week from today, on March 7th, and he's available, he'll be back on Thursday to be able to discuss this. I don't think that we're doing the residents a service by rushing this decision and having this conversation without all selectmen available and present.
But it wouldn't be rushed if, I agree with Peter, it wouldn't be rushed had we addressed it.
Okay, so it wasn't addressed at the appropriate time, but it's now before us to
But
address.
it's not before us, because you wanna put it off again. So.
I wanna
don't know-
put off.
I don't know what it is we're doing, Beth. We-
Peter, I'm asking that the board pass over this for now until we have a full board to have
We
a
do have a full
conversation.
board. We
We're
have a
passing
quorum.
over this, we're passing over the
entire-
fees, we're passing over something else, we're passing over the other, but we're gonna, I hope, appoint some poll workers. Beth, we're not functioning. I mean,
Peter,
at some
would you
point, we
like to
have to
become-
understand that.
Peter, I do understand that.
Okay,
I do understand that, and in my email to the board, that's why I went into an explanation of what I feel is appropriate and what's not appropriate.
yes,
Now,
and I got your
this
email
is
this
a
morning.
this is a very important decision, I feel. My opinion only. Jay did say in his email to me as well that he would like to be here for this discussion. I'm proposing that we pass over this and that we reconvene in a week to discuss this, when everyone ideally would be available. Would you be available next Monday?
Is that a motion?
I'm asking the question.
Because it's on the agenda, so unless there's a motion to pass it, I think that we should address the agenda.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to pass over this discussion to a future meeting.
So you wanna wait until when?
A week,
A week, which is what?
March 7th.
March 7th.
And I've had discussions with
And
David.
according to our charter, the final budget has to be March 10th. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
The
a
budget's
draft,
done.
a budget has to be
Your budget.
presented
Right.
to,
That's correct.
to the finance committee. That doesn't preclude amendment of that budget
No, I
thereafter.
understand that, but the reason to have a final budget to the finance committee 60 days prior to the town meeting is to give the finance committee sufficient time to sit down and look at all the budgets, have their hearings on the budgets and so forth. So, we're gonna give them a budget, and we're gonna say, oh, by the way, this really isn't the final budget, because we're gonna make some adjustments, maybe, possibly, unless somebody doesn't happen to be here. My argument, Beth, is not so much that we have to do this tonight because Jay is, wants to be part of it. That's okay. But at some point, we, the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Uxbridge, have to do our job. And your job is to make sure we do
Peter,
our job.
You don't need to remind me multiple times of what my job is. I am on a learning curve for this job. I offered last week, at our last meeting rather, that if you would like to put an agenda item again, that Cari had suggested a few months ago, to replace me as the chair, I will do that. Would you like to do that? Would you like that as an agenda item?
Beth, when we...
Peter, answer my question. Would you
No,
like that?
no,
Okay,
not
then what
today.
I would like from you
Wait a
is your
minute.
support. You are a senior selectman with great institutional knowledge. There could be so much benefit of you helping rather than chastising me publicly.
I'm not chastising you.
You're
Beth.
criticizing me,
I
Peter.
tried to help you back in October to say we need
By
to get on the budget.
criticizing me publicly. How is that helping?
Because I've tried everything.
You have not. We have yet to meet once
Barbara.
individually.
Guys, we have a
And we're off
motion.
topic here, so there's a motion on the table. Is there a second for it?
What, restate the motion.
No, there's just a motion to pass
Oh.
over. It wasn't, it was just.
A motion to pass over this agenda item,
And what's the agenda item?
the budget
But
one.
the
About
budget.
budget discussion.
The fiscal year
Budget discussion.
2012 budget discussion.
Who's making the motion?
Beth is.
Pass it, okay.
Who made the motion?
I did.
You did. Is there a second?
That's what we're asking for. Do we have a second? No? All right.
Okay,
motion
since
failed.
we're still on the budget item,
Mhm.
you mentioned that you were on a learning curve for chairman.
Mhm.
But when we had that vote for chairman, you didn't say, oh, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I want to be chairman, but I'm on a learning curve. I don't remember that.
Peter, that's water under the bridge at this point, and I think it's been addressed enough by you and by Cari that you don't feel that I'm doing a sufficient job. Should I have said I'm on a learning curve? I think that's pretty obvious if I was a clerk for my first year as a selectman. And I don't think it needs to be discussed any further. The next time you want to bring it up as a topic publicly, bring it up as a suggestion for an agenda item, and I will add it to the agenda.
I just want us to do our job.
Well, I'd like for you also to do your job and contribute to things rather than continually, not volunteering for.
What would you like me to contribute?
We asked you to contribute to the zoning bylaw meetings. You did not. We asked
Oh,
you
wait a
to
minute, wait a minute. You asked if I would
participate.
show the board the things that need to be done, and I said, whenever you want, and I'm waiting for you. You're the chairman.
No,
Guys, can we,
David,
stick
can
to
you
the
stick
agenda
to the
item?
subject?
Why don't we stick to the subject?
thank you. Go ahead, David.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for a quick review, at the February 14th meeting, the board discussed a few options that they wanted us to look at when crafting the 2012 budget. Just for a very quick background, as it stands right now, the budget remains as was presented to the board on the 14th. It is balanced currently. There is money contained within it for $100,000 for a municipal capital plan. There's also money within the debt budget for the borrowing of 2 heavy-duty equipment vehicles for the DPW. Of course, that'll have to be authorized at the Springtown meeting as well, but there is funding put aside for that. And basically, at this point, the budget is balanced. Now, one of the things, just one caveat, of course, before continuing on that, the budget is balanced on the municipal side. The school department has put forward a draft budget out of their public hearing. Where that'll go will be vetted in the coming months. But on our side, at this particular point, based on the revenue share agreement, we had a figure, we've hit the figure up to this point. The scenarios that the board discussed were basically in three different areas. That being a reduction to the senior center, a reduction to the library, and a reduction to the part-time staffer in the treasurer's office. One thing that we had to figure out in presenting these scenarios is we did go back and do a review, and there was not really any particular targeted numbers mentioned within any of those, aside from the treasurer's figure, which is just a salary line, so that one was fairly easy. So from that, we concocted 3 different scenarios that I'll quickly go over, and the affected departments are here this evening, and certainly if there's any questions on the effects, we can go into that at that point. The first analysis had cuts within the senior center, the treasurer, and what I called other budgets. The senior center would absorb a reduction of $39,145. That was basically about the only reduction of any significance we could see. The center has a budget of a little over $100,000. There's only one full-time employee within the department, that being the director. To get any meaningful savings out of it, the only thing we could really look at would be reducing the director down to part-time. And that reduction comes with salaries and benefits comes down to $39,145 in reductions to the senior center. At the same time, in this scenario, we eliminated the treasurer's clerk position. The part-time position has a funding requirement of $17,833. So you'd have that reduction, you'd have the senior center reduction, and there's a remaining reduction of $3,000. For that type of scenario, we didn't think that it would be really appropriate to do anything with the library on the third part of that, because the money is fairly insignificant. So we would find that within other small amounts within the budget. The second analysis looked at the senior center and the library. At that point, you're looking, the senior center has a reduction of $39,145. The library loses $20,855. And then the final reduction is all on the library. That's basically, I'm sorry, there is a typo there. It's $60,000 to the library, not $80,000. So those were the three that we looked at. The effects are listed within the memo, within the attachment. If we really need to get into those, we can. But the final recommendation that was put forward at this point, or that's being put forward to the board, is that we take some time, at some point in time, to discuss overall services. What does the town wish to provide? This is something that's sort of, in a way, outside of the budget. It's budget related, but it's not trying to hit one target number. It's identifying which departments are understaffed, which departments have the need, and which departments are going to have to lose or pay to upgrade those departments if that decision is made. Our problem at this point is March 10th is our deadline. We really would like to be able to give one budget to the Finance Committee. We have done budgets with changes in the past. It's led to a lot of confusion. Usually the changes are great fluctuations within state aid. But if we assume at this point that state aid is going to remain similar to where the governor's budget is, at this point in time, the recommendation would be that the board take the budget as it is. We can certainly go through it through subsequent meetings, but at this point in time, let's figure out if DPW is really has a need. Let's figure out what that need is and how much it's going to cost going forward, and then we can put a plan together as to how we'll fund it, and we can figure out what services the town wants to really put forward going forward.
And who do you think should do that?
That would be the Board of Selectmen.
And do you think the Board of Selectmen is going to do that?
All we can do is bring it to the board and vet it out.
Not what I asked you. That's okay. I don't expect you to win.
I expect it would be a difficult decision
Mr. Cari.
regardless.
David?
Yes.
One thing in this, and let me address specific, because from what I can see, two of your options provide for specific elimination of staff. What's going to
Yes.
be the impact on our unemployment for those positions, or will there be impact?
There will be an impact. The only difference, though, is the unemployment fund is, for lack of a better word, an off-budget fund. It's not a fund. We put $15,000 a year into it. We have moved money from stabilization twice to fund it, but it's not something that would be related within the budget.
So we only have 15,000 in it right now?
No. We have about, if memory serves, we have up about 95,000 in it.
About 95,000, okay.
Yes.
The reason why I bring that up, because it does have an impact to
Of course it
what
does.
we do here.
Mhm.
So, for instance, under analysis 1, there would be an unemployment hit for the part-time clerk position, correct? Or has that position been filled long
No,
enough to qualify.
That would be a part, yes, but it'd be part-time benefits, but there would be benefits nonetheless.
Okay, you by chance wouldn't know potentially how much would hit?
Sorry, not off the top of my head. I can
Okay.
certainly
I know you can do a
get
lot,
that.
but.
I can certainly get that to the board on any of the figures within this analysis, however. I
Okay.
can give you maximum exposure.
Has the library indicated, with their analysis, how many, because they're cutting staff, have they indicated potentially how many positions?
It was generally,
They're just-
it's generally when hours reductions, but they're certainly here, so they
Oh,
can,
Mhm.
they can certainly address that. But there is an attachment that show the reductions in hours. I can't tell you how many people that is.
You know, and I guess, to me, this is my way, this is like David looked at, it's looking at the overall services. I understand that the department heads have submitted how they would intend to make their cuts. However, you know, I would expect that if the cuts became a reality, that there would be potentially other ways at looking at the layout of how they intend to use their money and restructure their departments to eliminate the least amount of services lost.
I don't know, how would that be possible?
Well,
If-
you know,
Because I think some of what, and correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the ancillary information we have here speaks to the fact that, you know, if we're looking at, of trying to cut, say, I'll use the senior center as an example, and if they were then, in order to be able to maintain and provide the meals that they do, that then individuals would have to be working at different hours of the day, so there'd be no crossover for them as well, and to
well,
keep.
to provide for crossover, for instance, like if the, the senior center is a good example. I believe that Tri-Valley shows up about 8:15, 8:30 in the morning to prepare the meals in the morning, so therefore if the senior center had hours from 8 or 8:30 until later, then the loss of meals to the senior center, Tri-Valley would not need to find a new location, and therefore they would still be able to be open for the meals to be provided daily at the center, and also to service.
But
But the
operationally.
proposal provided was either 9 or 10 o'clock as a start time. So that's where, you know, looking at operationally, you can provide, because the senior center used to have a part-time director, and they did have fluctuating hours.
Operationally, they could provide the services, but how would they, as a department, be able to function if they're not working hours together?
Well,
to reach the goal.
they don't have to work hours together.
How can they not then work together as a team to reach their goals, because there are different services that
It takes
each,
two people to do.
that the individuals perform? You know, how, and we're looking at, you know, outreach and how is that going to be maintained, and then also having the
Well,
director involved in that as well, if need be. I guess that's my question of,
You have to work it out.
Exactly.
You have to work it out.
I'd like to make a comment. I have a problem with this. We're late on the budget, we haven't talked about it, and yet we're ready to take the senior center director and make her part-time. I'm the only one on this board that's been in town their whole life. And I've seen the seniors that go there, and I've seen them getting older. And right now, there's a lot of, from 80 and up, people in there. Yeah, I don't think it's fair to the seniors to take their full-time director away for the services she's providing. And I will not support the senior center director being part-time. Not now, not ever.
Not ever. That's
Not
very
ever.
interesting.
I'd like to take care of the seniors.
Well, being one myself, I don't have any issue with that, Bruce. But seniors pay taxes too. I know, I'm one of them. And the money for the senior center comes from seniors.
They only have a $108,000 budget.
I understand that. And the cable,
Well, let's stay
Cable account
focused,
has
let's stay focused on it, Peter, we're not
$150,000.
talking about cable tonight, we're just focusing
yeah,
on
when you
the
talk about a
library
budget,
and-
you can't just look at one thing. You have to look at all the money we take from the people of Uxbridge and say, are we spending it efficiently and effectively?
I agree, which is
The reason
why,
we have a problem and we don't make decisions is because we're talking about A, and we forget that A is influenced by B and C.
I think that by us taking any of these actions, whether it's analysis 1, 2, or 3, that it is a knee-jerk reaction to an extreme winter, that it requires more time in order to develop it, and I agree, look at the overall picture. And do the residents the service that they deserve of making an educated decision.
And that's why I said, looking
budgets
at,
you got budgets that are $1 million, why don't you make that person part-time?
well, you know, and you bring up a good point, Bruce. I mean, no, a supervisor does not have to be present for every hour that a department is open.
We're talking about a senior center here, we're not talking about somebody who's got 35-year-old kids working for him, or men.
The senior
What are you
center
saying, the
director
senior
is
center
not
director?
there all the time,
They're-
nor should she be there all the time. You have to understand how things work.
I just
To
disagree
understand
with you,
that-
Peter. I think the senior center director should be there,
Well,
full-time,
she-
not part-time.
She's employed full-time. That does not mean that she's there all the time.
No, she's there more than all the time.
She puts,
Well, that
she
may
puts in
be,
hours
but
that she
she's
doesn't get
not
paid for.
there all the time. And you have to acknowledge that. It's just a plain, ordinary fact.
Just like the
She has things to do that may take her someplace else.
Of
You got
course.
a
But the senior
$108,000
center
budget.
still functions. The police chief isn't at the police station all the time. You see, you have to understand the reality of what you're doing. I don't disagree that we're kind of late in the game,
Really?
and I don't disagree that we haven't given this enough thought. That's why I said last October, we gotta talk about it. But we put off.
Made your
I
point
think
about
Mike's,
that.
Mike's got a budget, and I think we should stick by Mike's budget right now and think about this.
Is that
yeah.
a motion?
Make it a motion, and
Give it a
think,
motion.
think about this. You know, last week, or 2 weeks ago, okay, let's make the senior center director part-time. Out of the clear blue.
No.
Actually, it was not out of the clear blue. It's been
We were
discussion
just
that we've been bringing
thinking about
up
things.
since
What are we
last
gonna
spring.
do?
We knew that this was gonna be a tough year.
Well,
We knew
should have taken
we've
care
been
of this
talking
in
about.
October, right?
it-
We should have taken care of
Yes,
this
we
in
should have.
October.
Thanks a
But the-
lot, Bruce.
But the point is that this has been something that each of us has been thinking about and should have been seriously thinking about this whole time.
I have been thinking
Yes, to me,
about it.
this is not a knee-jerk reaction to what has occurred this winter. I think that this winter amplified the shortfalls that we have at DPW, but it's not a knee-jerk reaction. We've seen directly how DPW affected the start of school, how it affected police services, fire services. You know, so that's why this is an overall decision, whether or not we're going to align the money that we
You're gonna
have
take
and
it from
try
a
to.
$108,000 budget.
I'll entertain a motion to accept the current fiscal year 2012 budget as proposed on February 14th.
There's nothing for us to accept. The town manager's obligation is to present the budget to the finance committee by 60 days prior to the town meeting. Now, if we were doing our job, we would have a part in that, but we can't have a part in that 2 days before he has to submit the budget. So he doesn't need our vote to submit a budget. It's his obligation to submit a budget.
I think some selectmen need to go to the senior center more than what they do. And just see what goes on over there, and see what the director's been doing, and see what services they've been providing. I just think it's wrong, coming out of a $108,000 budget. Come on, give me a break.
Mike,
It isn't the quantity of money you spend on something, it's how you spend the money.
if we don't need to make a motion, then are there questions that you have for the board, or would you share with the board what your inclination is of what you're?
I agree that Public Works is understaffed and we need to find a way to increase the staffing. I don't know if that's gonna be possible within the coming budget year. I do recognize, however, that the senior center provides good service for a relatively small budget. I don't know enough about library operations to see if further cuts are possible, and that would be something that they would have to, the library directors would have to look at. So I really can't give a hard and fast recommendation about the library budget. They are, as an independent board, they have wide latitude in crafting their budget. However, I do recognize that there are state mandates in funding, and there would be consequences if that budget was cut.
Aren't we already underfunding the library as it stands now?
Well, we haven't made disproportionate cuts at this point.
Did we officially apply for a waiver last year?
We did.
Yes.
And we've received a waiver. As long as we can continue to keep the funding in a non-disproportionate measure, we'll have to keep applying for waivers, obviously, but that's the goal in crafting the budget, is to make sure the cut is not disproportionate, so we don't lose the certification.
Under these scenarios, would any of the analysis still keep us within the proportionate?
No. The minute we pull a figure, the minute the library is pulling a figure that's not proportionate to the rest of the reductions, it is a candidate for decertification. So under either scenario 2 or 3, it is a candidate for decertification. We'd apply for the waiver, of course, but the way the waiver worksheet works is it would be very clear that the library endured a disproportionate cut.
Are you familiar with what certification is for libraries? Do you know what it amounts to?
In what respect?
What is it? What is certification?
Certification allows for inter-library moving of data loans.
Okay.
It gets you the library grant money,
Okay.
which I think for this year is a little over $11,000. It also allows you to apply for any additional state and/or federal grant funding that you can do, and it keeps the CW Mars subscription active as well.
And
If
you know what the cost
if
of
there's anything I've missed, I call upon the library to come up and speak for
you
it.
know what the cost of the CWMI system is?
I don't know it off the top of
Was
my
it about
head.
20
It's
is it
professional
23 or
services
32?
within the budget.
15,000 this year,
Yeah.
thank you.
Now,
Like-
some of the library trust
Mhm.
requires that the town maintain the building and provide a free public library. It does not, however, require that everything done at the library be without cost. For instance, if you ask for a photocopy of something at the library, you pay 10 cents or 20 cents or whatever the figure is. There's nothing that I know of that prohibits, if I want the interlibrary loan and the cost is $3, if I'm not willing to pay the $3, do I have a right to force other people who don't want an interlibrary loan to pay the money? In other words, I get something for nothing, but somebody has to pay. If everybody used those services, the cost would be horrendous. We only have those services because most people don't use them. Everything we spend in town is paid for by the people in town. We don't manufacture money anywhere. It all comes from the taxpayers. And when we provide some so-called service in the town, the people who receive the service without paying are subsidized by people who don't use the service. That's just a plain statement of fact.
Tracy, I'd like to revisit the motion that I made.
Okay, motion by Ms. Pitman to accept the town manager's FY 2012 budget as proposed in the memorandum, or excuse me, as proposed dated 2/14.
Would we need to modify that as a recommendation to the town manager, or?
Motion by Ms.
You
If
asking
it's
her
ultimately,
if you need,
if it's,
she need
if it's
to?
ultimately the town manager's decision,
The town manager is required by the charter to submit a budget
correct?
Right.
for the town, not school side, well, actually, he submits the whole budget, including what he gets from the
Right.
school, to the finance committee. That's his obligation.
Mhm.
Our job as chief executive officer is to have a say in the preparation of that budget. But we can't do that a week before he has to submit it. It's just not physically possible.
I still
Make the
feel,
motion.
I still feel that the motion needs to be made.
You can make a motion that you support the budget, that's okay.
Yeah, I'll make,
Nothing wrong with it, it's
then
just
make a
not
motion.
required.
make a motion to support the budget, town manager's budget for fiscal year 2012.
And I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Discussion
Oh.
for a second, just for
More?
clarification.
Mhm.
Uh, Okay, forget it, no, withdraw.
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye.
Nay.
No.
Okay.
Moving on.
But that doesn't affect the budget. He's
Right.
gonna submit a budget.
But the Board of Selectmen did not support it, because it didn't pass.
So
Well, we're
thanks.
still on the budget. Could I have a
Stay
soapbox
the
for a
way they are.
minute?
Minutes.
2 minutes. You know, we're having this discussion over trying to save, raise $80,000?
For what?
approximately.
60.
Approximately
60.
Well, 60,000, in fact, 60 is probably closer to what we need, what we would yield. We've been talking about plan design. Right now, we have 2 carriers. We have Blue Cross and Blue Shield. We would like, and Fallon, we would like to eliminate Fallon. We can't do that without,
The teachers' union, right?
well, without the unions in general agreeing to it. We would save $200,000 a year on that, which, after the revenue sharing agreement, would be more than enough to fund this position. We can't do that.
Another reason to have our representatives and senator come here
There you go.
so that we can lobby for those and other things.
Well, I would
I've
just
talked to
ask,
one of the
I mean,
representatives
given
about
that, I would suggest that the people of Uxbridge make calls, not just to our reps, but also to the governor, to other state officers, and recommend that we have the ability to institute plan design. Given that we,
Didn't the governor give us that? Wasn't that part of his proposal? That
no,
each-
the governor's proposal is to fold us into the GIC, which we don't believe will save us a nickel.
One of our reps is working on that actively right now.
But, no, I believe they will support it, but I would, we need broader support.
But isn't,
This would save us the money. We wouldn't be talking about this tonight.
so all the if the employees who were town employees, if they all went to their respective union reps and asked for consideration under the health insurance to eliminate Fallon, wouldn't that also?
We're going to be actively speaking to the employees and holding some informational sessions to get people off of Fallon, but we've done that in the past, and it's not always successful. People, there's certain inertia that people have. They're on the plan, they don't want to change.
Is there a percentage that they would have to get? We would have to, if they took votes?
They would save money. Every single one of them would save money.
No, my point is, Mike, is that, can Fallon be dropped by a vote of the union?
Sure.
What's the percentage?
Um,
Like, let's say let's
it
say
would be
fire
a
agrees to get
majority
rid of
vote.
it, and police
Would be
fire.
it would be a proposal to amend the contract or as part of
The union wouldn't
negotiations. So-
drop it. Right, we write, it's our contract, it's town's contract.
Yes.
But the way the laws are,
Bring a little off
we
the
need the
table.
acquiescence of the unions in order to make that change.
I've been kicked off my soapbox.
No, I just
but I
asked,
think
just want to make sure that we're
It
keeping
was-
it
that was
within
the
the
point I
scope of
was
the
wanted- I
conversation
wanted
of
to
the
make
agenda
that-
item.
No, but it
I'm
is,
not
it's
kicking
talking
you
about,
off.
right, it has to do with the budget though, because you're right. I mean, we potentially could save $200,000 if individuals would switch off of Fallon onto Blue Cross Blue Shield or one of the other options. That's $200,000 that the town can use in another
And we
place.
frankly wouldn't be have to have this discussion tonight. We would be able to fund the additional position we're trying to find revenue for,
I mean, that's why when looking at the overall services that we
the
provide
DPW position.
to the town, you know, it's working more cost effectively and coming up with other ways to basically skin a cat instead of just saying, this is our only option, and if you don't do this, you don't get X. Here's an example.
Well, we're trying to do that. We're gonna be trying to migrate people off
Well,
that.
when, we are going to have, during open enrollment, we are going to require all employees to fill out new enrollment forms. And one of the things we think is gonna be very beneficial when it comes to Fallon is the fact that this year they dropped their dental attachment. Now, a lot of people are on Fallon because it had a dental service built in that Blue Cross didn't have. So last year, Fallon crossed the line and became more expensive than Blue Cross. This year, they're gonna be much more expensive than Blue Cross, and they're gonna be giving up their dental.
I
So-
had Fallon Select, and they dropped their
Right.
Select.
So we're figuring between the two, if we can get to the employees, we might be moving the lion's share of employees off of Fallon on a voluntary basis. But, you
Do
know,
you have to move all of them, is my question.
No.
no.
How many do you have to move in order to be able to eliminate Fallon as an option for this year?
If you eliminate, you have to move them all.
Taking all of them, right?
Okay, so that was my question. So
I'm
all of
sorry, I
them
didn't
have to
understand what
ag-
you were
right, so
they all
of
have to
them-
move for
All of them
Fallon.
have to agree.
That's correct.
And in fact, we couldn't eliminate it as an option. Even if we got 100% of the people to move off of it, the contracts still say we have to offer it as an option to let's negotiate it
Right,
out
but
of
if
the contract.
nobody's on it, then we save $200,000 because
Yes.
nobody's on it.
Yes.
Would
Potentially more.
Fallon
We,
maintain a contract below a certain number of
Yes.
participants? They will?
We've already kicked away from individual rating to what's called community rating, because our participation's down under 100 at this point.
Okay.
So it's, you know, it'll certainly, it won't change. I mean, Fallon will keep a plan open with 10 people in it.
Yeah.
You're just gonna pay the rate for it.
potentially, we could even save money on Blue Cross if we give them all of our business.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
I believe that there are people in the audience for a new business, letter D, discuss action distribution of firewood at high school site. So the board can move to that.
Yeah, give us some
Agenda item?
Yeah,
background.
there was nothing in here
Yeah,
about that. What is it?
We don't know what they're gonna do, or...
Well, that's the,
I received an email saying that they would make a truckload of firewood available, and they wanted, that would be in full tree lengths.
Who said they would make?
Ben, who was it that, it was,
was Dan DeVoe that contacted?
Dan certainly was,
I think was part of the email string.
Ben had some concerns about liability.
Yeah,
Well
I think overall, I just think that we
We
would be.
hold until everybody clears out.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Did this originate with someone? I mean, on the town
I
side?
do not know.
To my knowledge, it originated, I believe, with someone, and I don't know if it was with Shawmut or with the company that is actually doing the snow and then the tree removal, making an offer to the school building committee, correct, to say, Luke Grady of Shawmut, to say that, you know, there's a potential for some firewood to be available. Do you want to do that? So now it's brought before.
This is after the bid was awarded, I assume?
Yes,
Yes,
yes. Oh,
yes.
yeah, no, yeah, this is just recently.
just happened recently.
Just recently.
Wasn't there a question asked at the SBC meeting, what would happen with the wood during the clearing operations?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
And I think that there was,
Thank God,
someone said, well, you know, couldn't we have some wood for the town? And
What, are we gonna have a bonfire?
One truckload split equitably amongst 12,000 people. I
So that's
think
the background.
And they said it would be delivered in full length, full tree length, and I think they mentioned it would be about 10 cords would be a
Okay,
truckload.
fine. Then the easiest thing to do is to accept it, and we'll auction it.
Where are we
Right.
gonna put it? DPW? Do you have room for it with all the snow?
I mean, that's the problem. I don't see any place at the DPW yard. I mean, the only place that would probably be a reasonable location would be the compost center. But the compost center hasn't even been touched all winter. And then we'd have to worry about who's gonna oversee the movement of
Chainsaws.
people in and out of there. The compost center won't even open until, I think, April 3rd. But then we'd still have to have somebody there. Then we're talking about full, tree
Full
length
trees, you
pieces.
can't have people
Full
cutting.
length.
That's a concern.
I mean,
People
I
wielding
just see a
chainsaws.
disaster.
Safety issue as well.
Yeah.
I just
And
see
we
it
can-
as being,
We
A
can
very big
wholesale it to people who are in the firewood business,
That was Jay's
and they will
suggestion
pick it up there.
as well. Mhm. That is an opportunity.
Yeah. No, anybody can bid on it.
Yeah,
I would,
but it's not 10
Okay,
cords.
I went by what they said in the email.
There's usually, if the loader is in the back, they'll hold 8 card. If the loader's in the front of the truck, you can possibly get 10.
Well, you clearly know a lot more about this than I do.
Yeah, but, I mean,
I'll put my name in for the first load.
there's only one load.
There's only one load.
There's only one load.
but here, I mean, they're talking about moving it out in the full log length section.
That's okay. That's
You
done
know,
all the
where are you
time.
gonna, what, are they gonna just bring one log over to your house
No,
and
no,
drop
no,
it in
no,
your front
no,
lawn?
you get the whole load.
No,
That's
and
what I'm
it's that
saying.
person's
So
responsibility.
it's one
to take
person
care of
is
it.
gonna buy this whole load.
That's
In the
correct.
interim, the load's gonna be dropped off at DPW,
No,
so
no,
then
no,
they're
no,
gonna
no,
have to
no,
get a
no,
truck
no,
to come
no,
and get it.
no.
Well, okay, then explain it.
We're not gonna move it twice.
No,
We'll
just one.
we'll-
advertise,
Mhm.
we have one truckload of log, tree
Trees.
length,
whoever buys it gets
between
it.
8 and 10 cords. Put in your bid.
Why don't we auction on eBay?
Means if we don't have it, I don't
We
know
want
what
it for the people in
Wait a
town
minute,
now.
no, but because here's the problem, then who's gonna pay the transportation to move it?
The person who
No,
gets
they're
it.
gonna deliver it.
They're gonna deliver it.
They're gonna dribble it only in town.
One-
See,
one-
then you don't do it
one
on
place.
eBay, because
No.
then it's only somebody
gotta-
in
That could be
Gotta have
local.
somebody in Uxbridge. It's only fair. It's gotta be for somebody in Uxbridge.
So then you're not doing it on eBay.
No, I wouldn't do it.
I'm
like that.
suggesting it.
Well, that's what I'm I mean,
Depends what
because
kind of wood
Listen,
it is.
I know at least 10 people who would be happy to bid on it. So-
It says 8 cords, I would say.
I mean, wood is not an unknown thing in the
If it's
town of
pine, I
Uxbridge.
wouldn't pay
There are
$100
people
for it.
who burn wood, who cut wood, who transport wood, and do all those things.
did they indicate when it would be ready and when, I mean, because they're
They-
moving this stuff, so they're gonna put it on
They
a truck.
did not indicate anything, and they didn't indicate what kind of wood it would be. I mean,
It could be pine, it could be oak, it could be a combination. I mean, most
Yeah.
likely it's all gonna be one kind on a truck. They're not gonna
I
mix
don't
it.
know.
It'll be hardwood, pine they'll sell.
I have no idea.
That, I don't know that, that's
Well,
the
you don't
problem.
know
I mean,
that.
if
Well,
it's
we'll
pine, I
find
wouldn't,
out.
it's worthless.
But anyway,
But that's the,
if it comes to the
chance people
town,
will
it's
take.
town property,
Mhm.
then we need to dispose of it to the highest bidder.
There
If
you
you wanna
go.
locate it in town, that's fine. But it's not fair to say, I'm gonna get it, and you're gonna get it, or he's gonna get it. Whoever pays the highest price, back to the taxpayers, because it's taxpayers'
Right.
wood, gets the wood.
I just want to go on record that I have no involvement in this whatsoever. I just was brought into this at the 11th hour, trying to come up with a location of where we can put it.
Okay.
Well,
Specific
could we-
details, I have no idea.
Before that, though, could we perhaps have the auction prior to it and and then, no,
Yeah.
right, but then, so we
We
wouldn't have
wanna
to
know
find,
what kind of wood. We wanna
so
know
we
if it's
wouldn't have to
hardwood.
find a location
That's
to
all.
actually store it and then have someone else come in and take it.
No,
Is that a
they'll-
possibility or not?
They,
You
they
think?
will, when they cut this wood, they will skid it out to one pile. And then when it's ready to take it, they will put it on a truck
I'll
and
take
bring
it
it
and
to
go.
the
Okay.
person.
Just trying to see if it could be expedited in just one.
Yeah, but we need to know
Motion.
at least that it's going to be hardwood.
I have no
Sure.
idea
I'm
about.
not asking.
either.
that.
Okay.
That's the thing we need to know,
Right.
and we need to have a date by which, you know,
When it would
needs to
be.
be taken.
Mm-hmm.
If I can make a suggestion, if that's the case, then, you know, I think somebody should reach out to the school, i.e. Shawmut, and, you know, have a discussion with them, site visit, whatever it takes, so they can see the area that's gonna be cut, and then they can make, you know, kinda like, I mean, if you wanna consider like, what are the, I forget what they call the auction people that go and they auction off the storage bins.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You just, if, you know,
You buy-
open it up, this is the area that's gonna be cut, give me a price of what you wanna pay for it. Other than that, I have no idea about anything
Well-
specific to the project.
Right, I mean, you bring up a point, because here's a situation where, I mean, they may,
He's not the office, but send the tree warden.
The
Don't
problem
even
with
say it,
that, Ben,
Tracy.
is they don't want other people on site.
no.
Well, I know that, but I think they would make arrangements if, you know, if something like that was actually to move forward.
I think we need to find out whether or not, first of all, it would be able to be transported to a location, or is the contractor gonna say, no, we wanna know a preset site, and when we're ready, we're gonna move it? I mean, that's an important
If I
question.
understand the email
Because
correctly,
to move 8 to 10 cords of full-length logs, which I think we should not allow any cutting on town property of this into smaller pieces, you're gonna have to have a log truck to move this stuff.
That-
This is
now-
not something you're gonna throw in the back of your
They have
pickup.
log trucks, they're
I
not there with
understand
motor
that.
scooters.
I understand that,
Okay.
Peter.
actually,
So,
if I
when
can
will it be
interject real
moved?
quick, I will,
We need to
based
know.
on what I've seen in the
Nine-
email, they will deliver it anywhere within the city or within the town limits, period.
Okay.
And the people I will bid on it. I don't wanna
Yeah,
have,
'cause
I don't
you have
wanna
a
go and
lumber
see
mill.
it. I don't need to see it. All I need to know is it's gonna be hardwood. That's all I need to know.
I know, 'cause you
Prior
have a
to-
lumber
Need
mill.
Prior to making a decision, we need to find out of where it would go. We need to find out when it would be moved and what type of wood. Do you agree?
I would,
Because if we're looking at April,
I mean,
right, compost
chances
area's
are, like
open.
Peter said, they'll cut it, they'll skid it out, they'll
Right.
stockpile it, and then haul it all out at once.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sharon is very trying to work with us on this.
Would you
Right, they load it and move it.
take the extra any of the
Usually don't have.
I mean, again, that would be a
Usually only a
question,
couple of trucks doing this.
that would be a question that should be
Luke's
posed to
number, don't
Shawmut.
Yeah, I can call them.
Okay.
Why don't we call Luke tomorrow?
So we need to find when it'd be moved and what type of wood it is.
Okay.
I can
I
call
can-
Dan
I can
DeVoe
ask.
too, and he's the one that mentioned it from the
Correct.
start.
He may have this information, but.
He might already have it.
Okay, so we agree that it's gonna be it's one entity, I'll say,
Right.
because it
Yes.
could be a company. One entity is going to buy the whole 8 to 10 cords, whatever's on that truck, one entity. Okay.
From Uxbridge.
So it's gonna be one buyer. And how do you intend to set up the sale?
Any suggestions? What are you gonna do?
We can put it on the town website. We can put it on
course.
the Rolodex.
Never see that.
But you're here in person. You already know about it.
When everything goes on, you don't see that.
We can advertise it, and
I'll let you know.
we can simply have the same sort of process that we used for the fire cans. Just
Yeah.
submit a bid to the Board of
Submit a bid.
Selectmen's
Like,
office.
we'll be in the morning, we got a meeting in the morning anyway, so we can take care of it tomorrow morning.
Well,
Well, try to take care of
a
it.
sealed bid and
That process?
high bidder
sealed
gets it.
bids?
Yep.
Highest
Yep.
bid gets it?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's,
That sounds like a great plan to me.
Excellent.
and we
And you're
don't
off
move
the
it to
hook.
town property. I mean, I just see this as a,
Yeah.
Ben's off the hook.
Okay. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
and no beavers may apply.
Before you go, I have a question, and this, because we have a thing on water rates and so forth.
For the 14th, yep. Mhm.
When you change the water rates, and, you know, usage goes down as the price goes up and so forth. But cost of electricity also goes down with consumption, because every gallon that's used has to be pumped up to the storage tank. How much of an effect,
What's-
approximately, what's the annual electrical cost for the
Yes.
water department?
Yes, we can do that.
That I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to get back to you.
Okay.
I can get back to you at,
We want a motion for that last one.
Is the cost of electricity a substantial cost?
Dates yet, so I would say
I would say it's a fair amount,
Yeah.
given the pump stations.
we could
When-
do it without.
When consumption decreases,
Why don't we do a motion
and of
to
course
say
revenue
that
decreases, but how much of the
board will
decrease in
authorize the
revenue
sale.
is offset by a decrease in
Secretary.
electrical costs? Any idea?
That I don't know.
David
I'd have-
recognizes all of the costs.
Yeah, it's,
David recognizes all the costs when computing the rates.
A 1 week.
Oh, he does?
Yes.
For sealed to receive sealed bids.
Yeah, we could do, right, 7
That's
days of
interesting.
steel bids.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah,
you know,
to be honest, I'd have
and then
to defer to
depending
David
on-
on the exact model that he has, in establishing the rates.
Yeah, I know. Well, but no, there might be
Consumption
people
is
that-
actually up, and as he calculated the rates, even with the increase in SIFs,
fine, that's the only
the
issue.
average bill will
That's
go
all
down
over town,
slightly.
You can't see it.
Well, the cost will go down slightly anyway. The rate will go down.
Yeah, but.
When are we
I mean, they
gonna
could
set
start
the
cutting- They could start
rates,
cutting,
the
clearing.
water sewer
14th.
rates? 14th?
Yes.
They could start clearing in 2 weeks. They could. You don't know that. They could load it straight onto the trucks.
They might want to have that just be the first amount that they get rid of.
I make a motion to authorize the sale of the wood, the cords to be determined somewhere between 8 and 10. To one buyer who is a business or resident of the town of Uxbridge. At a date in the near future. Sale will be conducted over a 5-day business, 5 business days? Well, wait a minute,
4 business days.
4
because
business
afterwards
days.
Town hall is open.
4 business days by sealed bid.
Mhm.
I'll second that.
Second?
Do you wanna-
What's the motion again?
You reading it,
Yeah,
please?
step back.
Motion by Ms. Robertson to authorize the sale of the cords to be determined between 8 and 10 to one buyer who is a business or resident in the town of Uxbridge at a date in the near future. The sale will be conducted over 4 business days by sealed bid.
I see your
Seconded
bid.
by.
For future reference, so when people look at this 50 years from now, they know
Yeah, that,
what we're
I don't like the
talking about.
beginning of that.
You need to say, that we're gonna have an auction of the wood, to be received by the town as a result of clearing for the high school on Quaker Highway.
Yeah, that's better.
And then pick up where,
Yeah.
this is one lot,
The quantity and type of wood to be determined, yeah, somehow put that in there. Because we don't know what kind of wood it is at this point.
Yeah.
but he's not,
Well, anyone that
You
owns
can't do
property in
that.
town, we can't limit the
he's-
property owners.
yeah, he's giving the wood to the town, and then it becomes town property.
Yeah.
When the town sells property, we can't say we'll only sell it to a resident, or we'll only sell it to a business.
Is this the way he is offering it? Is he offering it to go back to residents? Or is he just offering it?
If he's offering it to residents, then we're out of the picture. He can give it to anybody he wants. If he's offering it to the town, then it becomes town property.
But do you know which it is that he's doing
Well,
It's to the town,
Yeah.
to the town.
So then that means, like any guy that's in wood business can buy the whole lot?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, whoever's gonna buy it is gonna buy the whole lot, whether it be a
The
resident
whole
or
thing goes.
business, the whole lot goes as one.
What does that do for a little guy like myself?
you can,
You can buy
could-
the whole
You could
lot.
buy it, and once you own it, you can call a few people and say, hey.
You can
listen,
resell
give me
it.
half and-
Yeah, that leaves
Yeah.
the little guy out. I mean, that's eliminating the poor person. You're gonna give it to somebody that's gonna make money on it.
We're not giving.
You're gonna sell it to the highest bidder so they can make money.
No. We're selling it
We're selling to the
to the
highest
highest
bidder,
bidder.
yes.
So the taxpayers will receive the benefit, because that money goes into the general fund, Ernie.
You're looking for the money, you're not looking to help out the residents.
That's what the law
Yes.
is. We help out the residents by making sure that the money goes to the general fund, which is used to run the
I
town.
understand
Yeah.
that. But I'm just saying, if you're gonna, when you sell it, you're gonna sell it by everything that's there or by the car. You're not gonna sell it by the truckload. You're gonna
No,
sell
we're
it
selling it by the
Selling-
truckload,
By,
the
by,
whole
by the
truckload.
lot,
Full
whatever the
load.
lot is, if it's 10 cords, 8 cords, 3 cords, whatever it is,
They get it.
that's what you're bidding on.
Or if you have it that way.
Yeah.
One truckload.
That's all they promised us.
That's all it is.
No, I understand, but that's a lot of wood.
No, he got it, that isn't much.
Could you reread it, please?
Yep.
I
Alright.
heard 6 a year.
Motion by Ms.
So you
Morrison
got-
that the board authorize the sale of the cords to be determined between 8 and 10 to be received by the town on the Quaker Highway. Hold on, let's fix that.
How did you phrase that again, Peter, at the beginning?
Spent all night doing this.
The,
Received by the town from,
The town will
the
auction
Town will-
the sa-
to the highest bidder the wood to be received by the town as a result of clearing of the land on the Quaker Highway for the new high school.
okay, what was that?
The town will
Town
auction.
yeah. The sale of the
Wood received.
wood received off the Quaker Highway site
to a single highest bidder by closed bid,
A sealed
Over-
bid, right?
by a sealed bid.
Sealed bid.
Yeah, sorry, by a sealed bid
bid
over a period of 4 business days.
And the date is to be determined.
Right. At a-
Well,
right,
before we
at a date in the
before we
future.
publish this, we're gonna know
Of course.
when we're
Right.
gonna get the.
Right, we're
the
just
wood,
letting them know that the date,
And we'll just have a date
We'll
by
just make
which
sure.
all bids must be received, and the date at which they'll be
Right.
opened.
and then, right, the details will be provided then.
I'll make sure tomorrow it's hardwood.
You just
Not
probably
quite.
wanna throw in there that they are a resident in the town of Uxbridge.
Yes.
Right.
Well, property owner is what, because we can't limit it to businesses.
Property owner in the
In
town of
Uxbridge.
Uxbridge.
I would just put
Make
resident.
sure you-
Resident,
I would
yeah,
put resident,
well,
not
resident
property
will
owner.
include businesses.
Are there any businesses that don't?
Because a resident means you can be renting. If you say property owner, then you have to actually
you actually
own
own your home.
property, so it'd
Pretty
be,
much.
Resident of Uxbridge.
A resident, okay.
I had an idea,
Be
but
so
I don't know,
hard.
maybe I shouldn't even.
I don't know if that's legal.
Should we
but
reserve
it
some
is.
to have it mailed out to use in the school?
what is it?
Well, I don't know if you can limit
Reserve some and have it
goodbye.
mailed
We're
for,
selling
We're
property.
selling to,
One
well,
lot
then
with the
resident
highest bidder.
slash
It's
business,
nice.
to the highest bidder.
We don't care.
We don't
That's
care
a-
who
I don't
buys
care
it.
if they're from Mars.
As long as they buy it.
They buy it
Give
and
the
pay
money
the
to the
highest
town.
price.
That works.
Now, it's not likely that somebody from
Okay, so- okay,
Saskatchewan
then
is
just to
gonna
the
drive
highest
down here
bidder.
and get
We
the
don't need
wood.
the resident
Yeah, but the
thing.
problem, but they will only deliver it in Uxbridge.
That's
That's why
right.
we're limiting it to Uxbridge.
But it was given to, it's given to the town.
Uxbridge resident.
So it should
Right, so
be,
it has to be limited to somebody in the city, because that's the only place it can be
in the
delivered to.
town limits.
Well, that's important
How-
for us to
okay, wait
point
a minute.
out, because
How
that's.
about, how, the town will auction the sale of the wood received off the Quaker Highway site to a single highest bidder in the town of Uxbridge
Yes,
by sealed bid over a period of 4 business days within the date to be determined.
Right.
Okay?
yeah.
we have a second?
I get the second.
Bruce got the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey,
Alrighty.
that's-
Moving on.
I don't know how you have a single bid and not have it be a single bidder.
Well, a number of people
Shall
could.
we move
There can be a
on?
group of people.
It's still a single bid,
Oh, that's
highest
true.
bidder.
Shall we move on back to old business and finish that up? Bruce,
Okay.
a new high school
Okay.
project, SPC meeting update?
Sure. Okay, we had a last meeting, it was a really quick meeting, it wasn't too bad. It was for printing and advertising by the Ben Franklin Smith Company, and we had 4 invoices. One of them was for $63.78, $397.81, $4,133.03, and $202.66. This is all for bid printing, advertising and printing. I'm not gonna read the invoices off. And the second thing was,
I read all that.
okay, yeah,
a
I
while
made a
ago.
packet for every selectman
Okay.
saying that, so I'll just go over it real quick. And Raymond Design was paid an invoice for $55,750 for construction and contract documents. And Raymond Design was also paid A&E bid for bidding, $8,000, was a total of $63,750. And at the meeting, we met the clerk of the works from Jocelyn Lester, it's Mr. William McNally. And Norman Lamone, I hope I didn't mess that up too much, of Turner Facilities Management Solutions is commissioning agent for the MSBA. And we talked about stipends for 20 months for our inspectors. I'm not gonna go into money on that because we're still trying to figure that out. And a couple of big things coming up on March 10th. The trade bids are due for the main package, and the big bid opening will be right here at the Lower Town Hall at 2 p.m. Right, Mike?
Yep.
And on 3/17, Charlotte completes the final GMP. And on 3/23, we'll have a joint school building committee Board of Selectmen meeting to approve the final GMP at 6 p.m. at the high school library. And I also gave you a chart on up-to-date cost and what, I have it in color, but you don't have it in color, but it gives you up-to-date cost. And that's about all that went on. And Mike, do you have anything?
Well, they gave me,
Because I know you had some things.
they gave you some concerns, and I think with the exception of the building inspector stipends, I think they're all in hand. There were concerns with the building inspector issuing the permit on time, but that has been done. They began work today on site clearing.
I took pictures.
You took pictures, excellent.
I did myself.
I didn't get out there.
I was out
I know they're clearing a road in there, and they're gonna create a parking area.
Yeah, they did.
I don't know when are they talking about having an official groundbreaking now that there's someplace for people
That's
to park?
something we'll probably go over in our next meeting.
Right.
No.
And, sorry, the next meeting, I believe is gonna be when it's the joint meeting on the
Right.
23rd, correct?
23rd, right.
Town Council has provided a letter to the planning board opining that the large development special permit zoning bylaw is not applicable under the Dover amendments, so, and the planning board was satisfied with that. I have asked them to produce a letter to that effect for the school
We
building
should not
committee.
have had to use town council for that. Anyone who reads the state law and then looks at our bylaw should understand that the only thing that the town of Uxbridge can have any control over is the height issue, nothing else.
And that was their question, they want.
Well, the question was
That's
asked, so it
precisely
was,
because they hadn't planned, correct me if I'm wrong? they felt that they should come before the planning board for those issues, and they,
No, the planning board has nothing to do with the height, that's a ZBA.
Well, they asked for clarification, they received the clarification, and they're
Yeah,
satisfied.
I know that, but we're paying for it.
Correct.
And I see the town council bill creeping up and up for things that really shouldn't be asked. We shouldn't have, anybody who wants something from town council gets it. We need to think about these things.
Well, this was an important issue that needed to be resolved with planning. They asked for clarification, so.
Yeah, I know, they
thought
asked.
I thought it appropriate to provide closure to this segment, that this is not something that was looming over us as a potential stumbling block for the.
It shouldn't be looming over us, and it shouldn't be a stumbling block. It's, you know, I don't see, you'd have to look at something really sideways to say, yeah, you know, this comes before the planning board. It doesn't.
did the, building inspector, sign the paperwork?
The Dover Amendment letter, no, he did not. But
Where do we
it's,
stand on that?
well, it's moot now that planning has opined that he agrees, and he will sign a letter to the effect, as you said, on height restrictions. But as to other issues, he felt it wasn't his place to sign the letter, but it effectively is resolved by planning taking the vote that they are not involved in this. There will be a courtesy meeting.
He doesn't have to affix his signature.
No, they're satisfied,
Well, he signs a building permit.
yes. But he did have concerns about planning's role in this, and he felt that by signing that letter, he would be waiving the planning board's right, and he didn't feel he had that authority.
Okay.
So the planning board has agreed that they don't have a dog in this fight. They will be, who's going to be at that meeting? It will be Jocelyn Lesser, and there'll be some other people will be appearing as a courtesy before planning, just to explain the project.
Right.
But they're not looking for an approval.
When did,
Courtesy, it's a courtesy meeting.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of courtesy meetings. It sets a bad precedent.
Carrie, what's your question?
when did national, is it natural?
Natural heritage.
Natural heritage, when did they officially issue their permit?
Is it Thursday?
Yeah, I think so. Thursday, or was it Thursday or Friday? I didn't see it on Thursday, but they may have issued it then. And apparently the second tribe, which were the Narragansetts?
Wampanoags.
Oh, the Wampanoags.
Narragansetts actually already went through. That was the one who did do the walk, Doug Harris.
And I guess they did ultimately do the walkthrough, but they
On the
didn't
morning
find,
of the
they didn't have
24th.
issues.
The Wampanoags?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so that's what everybody was up there for, okay.
So,
And no issues were raised?
No issues.
so
And that
we're-
was a deadline of midnight on the 24th,
yeah.
Right.
right, or 11:59, if there were gonna be any issues, but none were found, none were raised.
So it's moving forward. It's, we're into the next phase. They're on site.
Yep, it's going. Any other questions? No? Okay. So, shall we move on to new business, appoint a poll worker, John Congdon? Find his form.
Motion to appoint John Congdon and Dorothy Downing to be poll workers.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And new business C, annual town warrant, set open and close date for spring annual town meeting warrants. So we are gonna set the open date for March
Wasn't there,
1st.
also Dorothy? Did you do Dorothy?
You did them collectively,
Oh, you did, collectively.
correct?
Correct. Open date would be 3/1,
3/1.
3/1.
So entertain a motion to,
and the close date, excuse me, I'm sorry, 3/11,
3/11.
that would be a Friday, and that's 60 days prior to town meeting.
Is there any way to close it on Thursday so we don't have to have town hall open on that Friday?
You do need that 60 days.
Right, so we can close it on the 10th then? we'd have our 60 days still.
We could.
Seems more efficient.
It does, instead of just opening it, having the,
Could
Do I
close
see
it
any
on the
reason?
10th. I would only say, at this point with the street acceptances, a day matters. That's the only thing I would think to give it that timeline, but absolutely, you could do Thursday.
I'd like to keep it 3/11.
A day makes a difference. With,
in what respect, though? I mean, they don't have to have everything finished, all they have to do is have the warrant article to us.
right,
So I don't see how it would make a difference.
they do have to get in preliminary plans. It's
But
been-
isn't all that stuff already?
It's
Sounds like
typical
it's in
where it comes
process
in.
with Ben.
It's typical where it comes in. We've been here at 4 o'clock and things have come
Right.
in, believe it or not. But it's the
Well,
board's
they'll come
pleasure.
at 4
Right.
if the deadline is 4.
Is deadline is 4, exactly, so why not make the deadline
They'll come in at 3. If the
4
deadline is-
on the 10th?
But I do anticipate a couple of streets coming forward. And they're just catching wind now that this is basically the opening date and closing date were being set. Ideally, it would have been nice to open the warrant maybe a week ago.
Okay, so we go 3/1 and 3/11?
When is,
Up to
town
the
meeting?
board.
The 17th or the 24th? Of May?
11?
When is, which day is it? Town meeting?
11,
Yeah.
Tuesday.
No,
10th.
no, it has to be the 10th then.
Yeah,
10th.
10.
Oh, it's early this
It
year.
is, everything's
What
early.
day is the
It's
election?
early.
May
It is.
24th?
I don't know. I keep forgetting when it is.
It's always the, I thought it was always the 3rd or
Yeah,
4th
no, it's the
Tuesday.
10th, it's the 10th.
It is the
Mhm.
10th.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
For the town meeting?
Town
Oh,
meeting
it's
the
second
10th
Tuesday.
this year?
Second Tuesday.
Second Tuesday.
I always thought it was the 3rd Tuesday. My fault.
I'll make a motion, open the warrant on 3/1/2011 and close it on 3/11/2011.
Do you have a second?
We need a time?
5 o'clock, 3/11/2011, 3/11/2011. 5 o'clock, closing date, time, 5 PM.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's a Friday, correct?
Yeah. Kelly and I prepared to be here.
All right.
Okay.
Been another day, that's all.
You don't have to be.
All right,
you don't
let's
have to be.
jump back to our meeting minutes and approve meeting minutes that we have, which are both for the 2 meetings that we had on the 23rd, correct? The 4 o'clock meeting, which was with the Cable Advisory Committee,
Yeah, it wasn't with the Cable Advisory Committee.
that we had, and the Cable Advisory Committee were guests of.
Well,
Well,
actually, they
Or
couldn't,
what?
you know,
They
technically, they
closed.
weren't supposed to be there.
Because they didn't.
We have a little change in the minutes after the word second line under old business after presented. We've deleted and researched by the CAC and replaced that with the board reviewed the contract additions dated 2/14/11 presented to the board, period. And there's a typo with coaxial. Correct, Peter?
Yeah.
Thank you.
In the motion,
Yeah.
Mr. Cahill, Mr. Desilets, and Mrs. Robinson assist in negotiating the charter contract with the town manager. So, the board's not gonna negotiate the contract.
No, we are negotiating the contract.
We have members of the
They're go-
board
I
negotiating.
thought we used the word representing that you're gonna be
That's what-
representing the board
That's what we put.
in
that's what we said,
negotiations, right?
Yeah, representing.
Mm. Okay, so do we all have all those corrections? I'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from the Board of Selectmen's meeting on February 23rd, 2011 at 4 PM.
So move.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the meeting minutes from our meeting on Wednesday, February 23rd at 5:30.
Under old business A, third line down, the board was informed that these were unlikely to be removed away.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Get
Be
rid of the word
removed.
away.
Yeah.
Strike away.
To be removed by. Okay, the board, after expressing misgivings,
No, it
Oh, wait,
says after
that's-
feeling.
Feeling
After
pressure, now
feeling
what does that
pressure.
mean?
okay,
How did you feel the pressure?
I
I
don't
didn't,
have
I
that.
didn't feel any pressure.
Where did that word come from?
Well, we had misgivings
I-
earlier.
I-
Didn't we change
I'd
the-
use misgivings,
so-
but
Misgivings?
The board, after having misgivings, not expressing misgivings, right?
Well, I don't know.
Well, is this not related to
This is the-
Peter's duress?
Yeah, that was Peter's.
Exactly.
That's when you're
Do you
under
want to
duress.
use the word duress?
You didn't want to use it. You were
Correct.
too
I-
cowardly to use the actual word.
I
Yeah,
think
but
we're
there's a difference in using it, though. He didn't want us to use it in the motion, but to say that that's what we were feeling, although we didn't use it in the motion.
What were you
Board
feeling?
feeling
Pressure?
duress?
What were you feeling?
Pressure, duress, what do you want? Your minute.
Strike it.
No.
The board
Board voted to
expressed
accept.
that they had no choice but to,
There's one word that,
we had no choice.
that's what under duress means.
Right. Well, then we're not using the word duress.
Yeah, I know that.
That the board had no choice but to approve
Okay.
a restriction that they were uncomfortable with.
The board expressed they had no choice.
I don't think that's accurate, because not everyone
Well, yeah.
necessarily
We
was
could just
comfortable
strike
with
that sentence.
We'll just
If
strike the
that's-
after
Yeah.
feeling pressure, the
Strike
board.
it.
Just, but the board voted to accept the.
You're gonna have
As
3
written.
votes for that, no matter what it said.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
The board voted to accept the conservation
Yes.
restriction
Right.
as written
The
and then
board
go into
voted to-
motion. Okay.
And go into the
Good.
motion.
Fixed up.
Okay, so those corrections, I'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from Wednesday, February 23rd, 2011, 5:30 PM, Board of Selectmen meeting,
So move,
as amended.
so move.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, so, new business, just wanna make sure, getting through everything. New business, letter E, discuss action town manager review process, vet out timeline of actions and set expectations. In the town manager's employment agreement, section 6, town manager evaluation. Letter B states, quote, semi-annually at the end of November, the month of November, the board and the town manager shall define the goals and objectives, ... It's my opinion that we as a board, and I will take the responsibility as the chair, did not fulfill our obligation to the town manager in regard to that. And in our meeting on February 14th, it was obvious that the selectmen don't agree on the performance of the town manager. So with this agenda item, what I'd like to do is pull us back together and look at a process that we should put in place, given the fact that we didn't respond to the town manager on a timely basis per his contract. And that we set a schedule of how to move forward from this point.
I agree that we did not fulfill that portion of the contract. However, I also feel, after our discussion at our last meeting, that we did not fulfill another section of that, that came out in our discussion. Said goals, objectives, and priorities shall generally be obtainable within the time limits specified and within the annual operating and capital budgets and appropriations provided by the town and by the events that have occurred during the year. I think during that meeting, we had raised concerns that we knew that the goals were not attainable attainable, and that we just basically settled on those because we couldn't come to an agreement. Looking at the whole town manager's contract, I'm of the opinion that we have done a major disservice, not only to the town manager, but also to the town. And I don't see where, we have fulfilled our agreement for this contract. Therefore, I think that trying to establish a timeline to set in place between now and June is, I think Jay's used the words arbitrary dates that don't necessarily have a meaning. Therefore, my recommendation would be that at our next meeting on the 14th, we set an agenda item to consider renew of the town manager's contract again. And at that time, I think that we should set aside this contract and move into negotiations for a new contract for the town manager. And then we can set a time frame to effectively work to evaluate the town manager for his performance for the last almost 10 months, 9 months, right? And then move forward from that point. That's my recommendation.
By setting aside this contract, explain that to me, because I guess, in reviewing this contract, there are things that, the way it's written and what we have in the charter, it's not possible. We have June 30th is the contract date, and then we review him in June. How does that happen?
You can't unilaterally set aside a contract.
Well, what we can do is, we can vote to go into negotiations for a new contract.
Yeah, you can do that.
Right.
But the existing contract stays in force.
It does, but we can, the idea is that we would, my proposal would be that we would, look to finalize a new contract with the town manager, by April 25th, 2011, which would then supersede this contract the remainder of the year, and we would work out
Well, then
new
you can,
terms.
again, you can only do that by mutual consent.
I understand
Right.
that. Right, exactly. Right, because we haven't, I mean, I just don't see how we can now properly fulfill all sections of Section 6.
Yeah.
You know, and be fair to the town manager.
So, Cari, your proposal is to have on our next meeting,
14th of March.
the 14th, an agenda item
To, we can use the same language from our last one, vote, what was it, vote action, town manager contract,
Actually, I thought we had, it was still discussion action,
discussion.
town
right.
manager.
Discussion action, town manager contract.
That's fair.
And then at that time, we discuss moving forward, I mean, to be honest, I put forward a motion to, enter into negotiations with the town manager for a new contract, to begin on April 25th, 2011, and then we can vet out, then we can go forward in that process, and what we can do is then set up, okay, now, with this new contract, how are we gonna evaluate him for the last year, and then continue on into a continuation of a contract. We can talk about when we want it to be finalized.
Does everyone understand why we had a problem this year?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, why did we have a problem this year?
Because we didn't
didn't
fulfill
fulfill the
our
contract.
goals.
We didn't
We
fulfill
had
our
to do
goal.
an evaluation,
Exactly.
right, it was our fault, we failed.
But in what particular way?
We failed by not setting goals that
Goals.
were attainable
And
by
and
not setting any-
evaluating
by the end
him
of November.
Okay.
at the end of
Mm-hmm.
November.
Okay, yes. But
And-
the primary thing were the goals. The goals were
Correct.
not,
attainable,
you know,
Or attainable.
not only were they not attainable,
realistic.
they were mushy.
Right, so we
You
need.
want,
right.
the goals should come from the charter. The charter specifies
Right.
the job of the town manager. And you evaluate someone by looking to see how they've done in accomplishing the particular jobs.
Right. Okay. I agree. Mike, you look confused. No? Tired?
Apprehensive.
Given that we are already behind in this process, would the board entertain meeting sooner than the 14th to discuss this
14th.
singular item? I'm throwing it out
14th 's a
there,
good day. I think
throwing it out there
14th
as
is
an option.
Best day.
Well,
What do you
I
think?
mean, I would agree, I don't think that we need a meeting sooner than
No.
that. Under the, I mean, here's the premise, that the way that I look at it is if we do not set to enter negotiations for a new contract, then what happens is this current contract stands, which he cannot succeed under this current contract. We have failed to
We
do,
failed.
we failed our obligation, and his only recourse, according to the contract, is termination.
Well,
And the only way
Resignation.
that he can succeed is that if he gets a fully successful in each rated category, shall we be required for renewal of this particular contract. Well, how can he attain that if we didn't set goals that were achievable? Because the evaluation is to be specifically, shall be based on the goals and objectives developed jointly by the board and the town manager.
well, I guess,
So the contract itself is not attainable.
I don't necessarily agree that the goals that we set were, Peter, what was the word you used, squishy?
Squishy.
Squishy. As a whole, I think there are some that are achievable and some that are a stretch. And Cari, to your point, when we did do the review of the goals, I mean, we adopted them in November and we were behind on that. But, you know, you had said that he should be judged strictly on the goals that he was given. So now how are we going to be making a decision by strictly measuring him on squishy goals?
Or not, that's my point. We're going to, my recommendation would be is that we enter into negotiations. We establish a new contract. And in that new contract, we then reset the clock. And he will now, you know, this contract will run, my recommendation is that we run the contract from April 25th, 2011 to April 30th, 2013. And then we set up guidelines within that contract for specifically what would then happen if the board then fails to establish its priorities. Because this contract, if the board fails to do what it's supposed to do, his only recourse is
Well,
termination.
to play devil's advocate, no offense, I want you to be alarmed by it, but what happens if on the 14th of our next meeting, we don't agree as a board? What's the next step?
On what? Don't agree on what?
If we don't agree to renew his
Renew it.
contract and then enter into negotiations on the 25th of April?
I guess we'll cross that.
I guess that's where I was trying to
Well,
put
that's something to
together.
think about from now until 14th of March.
But again.
Well, that's where I was trying to put together a different type of process to look at that would still have the same results.
Right, but
Changing
we
dates, of
can't,
course.
though. But we can't, because this was, I mean, in paragraph 1, I mean, it clearly says.
Well, there's no reason, if we can change it so that we want to talk about it on the 14th and then potentially enter into negotiations on the 25th of April, there's no reason that we couldn't have an executive session only, town manager performance review on
what's
the
the
14th, or
That's
But
not
you
executive
just-
session.
That's an executive, it doesn't qualify for executive session.
it would be if there are issues that involve other people. So whether it
But we
be an
haven't
agenda
had the
item,
discussion to
so whether
determine
it be an agenda item or executive session, I guess the question is, what's the difference between the dates that you've set out versus the dates that I set out? Which were just, and they were thrown out just for this purpose, to have a discussion. That's all.
Because under my scenario, we messed up as a board, okay? And therefore, the only way to make this right, because in my opinion, under your scenario, he will not be properly evaluated.
Fairly.
In what regard?
And in Jay's words, it's
A muddle.
It's he used, I said it before, he said, it's a semantic. The date you're picking is just pulling a date out of thin air.
We had addressed all this on the 14th, though. Can't we just address all this on the 14th?
Right, I mean, to me, because we did not fulfill this one section of the contract that is critical to our area, therefore we,
And you're talking about section 6, correct?
Yep.
Yep.
section 6.
Right, same one I
It's
had.
like, we breached the contract, and when you breach a contract, to the level that we did, I think what we need to do is agree to
Okay.
write a new contract.
No, I think what we need to initially agree to is to have it as an agenda item
Right.
for a discussion,
Right,
action
but
with
that's-
town manager contract.
The issue is whether you are dissatisfied with the town manager or you're
Correct.
not dissatisfied. That's the issue.
Correct.
This stuff is just fluff.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
14th
So-
of March.
Forget about all that stuff.
Yep.
You have to make a decision as to are you happy or unhappy?
Mhm.
If you're unhappy, are you unhappy enough to say, well, I want to go through the
I'll see
process and
how I-
find somebody else?
Yep.
Okay? And the
Not
faster you do that,
Mhm.
the better for everybody.
Right.
Right.
No one is advanced by waiting and kicking the thing.
I
down.
agree.
And that's fair to Mike at the
I
same
agree.
Fair to
time.
everybody.
I agree.
Well, and that's where, right, I mean, that's why I
But
say,
that's the
we
basic
know,
decision,
you
not the
either know
goals
that,
and schmoes.
but the point is, you either know that or you don't. That's why I
That's
think
correct.
Jay was
And you
saying
know
that was a
that now.
summarily statement. You either know, you're either you wanna work with him, or you don't. You don't need another month to figure that out.
Right.
All another month is gonna do is, say, well, here, I've got the evidence now to support whatever position that I'm going to take. And that's why I don't see us trying to rush and put all of this in the next 60 days is gonna make any difference. Either you're on board for the town manager
Or
or
you're
you're
not.
not.
One of the two.
And we need to let him know.
Yep, that's fair to him.
All right, so on the 14th, we'll have the agenda item of discuss/action town manager contract. That we had last time.
I agree.
Okay. No motion necessary. Correct. Moving on, member issues. Do we have any member issues?
Yeah. Streetlights are put off again. And
Because
tell me what feedback we need from Scott. I assume you mean Scott Freitas, the police chief.
Yes.
Now, what is it you want from him?
What I was going to ask is for him to review the list of the ones that we have turned off, and if there are any additional ones that could be extinguished as well.
Okay, so you're still making the police chief in charge of turning streetlights off?
One is public
That's just a
safety.
question. There's nothing to do with safety. Streetlights are not safety. Streetlights are streetlights. But anyway,
I'm open to suggestions of who you feel should review it.
well, you know my feeling. I think the board should do the work that the board is supposed to do. But I'm only one.
I agree with you.
Well,
I'll go out there and
My
take a
question,
paper and pen with me.
I'm somewhere in between.
Okay, while you're thinking,
No,
collect your
what I'm
thoughts.
saying, no, on that though, Scott's already done that. The police station has already identified which ones are public safety. If they feel that they may have erred in a recommendation, then they are free to come to us at any time and say, we have additionally identified this street light either to come on or this street light to go off.
Good point.
In the interim, I don't think we should task the police department with anything else to do with streetlights. I don't think that's an effective use of time.
That's fine.
To the point of the streetlights, if there are residents or individuals, town employees, whatever, you know, elected officials, if there is a streetlight that you believe should be either on or off, please follow our procedure in notifying us and asking for a recommendation to turn a light on or off, as we have had done, and then we will verify on a case-by-case basis from National Grid as to whether they are privately owned and we can turn it off if in fact it's on. Instead of having all this work done to find out which ones are owned by us or not, if anybody calls us and says, shut off this street light, then on a case-by-case basis, we'll ask National Grid, is that light we're paying for? And if they say it is, then it comes before the board, just like a request to turn a light back on, would be my recommendation on how we handle this. Instead of us arbitrarily reviewing this process again, I think we reviewed it once and we should leave it at that.
On streetlights, separate issue. I read the emails about the cost of, you know, all that stuff.
Yep.
And I remember we went through this very emphatically about the charge. That their concept, that they apply the depreciation to the whole thing as a group, just doesn't make any sense, because every light was put on individually. Every light has a different, not every light, but the different lights have different costs depending on the size of the light. And that sets up a separate depreciation schedule or amortization schedule for each separate light. And most of the lights that we have in town have been up for a long time. We have not put new lights on for a long time. Therefore, most of the lights, virtually all of the lights, should by now be completely amortized. So that we turn a light off, the whole cost should disappear. There should be no cost to the town, yet we're only saving 50%. And we asked before very emphatically that we want something from National Grid outlining exactly how they arrive at those things. And I don't want any wishy-washy, well, we add this list and we add them all together and divide by 15. No, because that's not how it works. When we put a light on, we pay a certain monthly fee. And that fee is based on an assumption that the light will be up there long enough so that the power company will recover not only the cost of electricity, but recover the cost of the light itself and the installation. And that's a certain number of years. And that is something unique to each light. And it cannot be otherwise. And if it is, I want something to show me why it is, because I think we're being cheated.
Weren't we also in this process, after we went through this and it was vetted, they were gonna start taking the lights down so that we got 100%?
That's what we wanna look into, but they want to charge us for that
For taking
process.
it down.
The unamortized cost of the light.
There should be no unamortized cost.
No, then they have to show us where that particular light is still
That's not the way
amortized.
that's not the way they calculate it. They socialize the cost.
Well, I agree
See,
with
that-
Peter.
I wanna
we don't
see,
own it.
that's fine, but I wanna see where
They have the
that
right to
is
do it.
in a contract. And I wanna see where that is, because that's
Well,
patently
we have
not
a new
fair.
contact there. I will ask her.
Yeah, there's a new person, so let's get her down here.
Yep.
And make sure that you convey to her exactly what it is we're looking for.
Well, to make sure that we have that correct then, would it be best for the board to reduce it to writing
I-
and provide it to them in writing? That way,
I can send a letter, and if
Formal
it's
request.
unsuccessful, then you can escalate it and send it from the board.
could you draft then that letter and
I will
the
do
board
that.
will review it?
Okay.
And then Peter, you can make sure the language is correct?
Department permitting fees, again, that's been kicked off the table. If you remember, this came up in December, and it came up specifically because I saw a renewal fee of $1,200 where none was justified, and so we changed that one, and we said we're gonna look at all the fees. And the reason we're looking at them is because of a requirement under the law that a fee cover the actual cost of something. And for some reason, something that could be very simply accomplished has, again, been muddled, so it never gets done. And for the board itself, for the fees we set, we have to look at it and say, what does it cost us to issue this permit? And we have to ask the same thing of other boards and committees that have the authority to promulgate fees.
I believe there are still some departments that are outstanding in responding, is that correct, Tracy, or not? Okay. The board fees, I'll put on the agenda to review on the 14th.
When we sent the notice to the other boards and committees, did we explicitly explain to them what the law is?
We did
No,
not
we did
quote
not.
the law.
Okay, we should.
Perhaps follow up.
I sent that to everybody.
Mhm.
Okay. There was quite a bit
There's
of,
always a tendency of every board or committee to want to say, oh, look, you know, that's okay because we're bringing in this money. You know, so therefore, you know, we can hire an extra person, we can do this and we can do that because we're self-supporting. You're not self-supporting.
But they don't get their
If you
individual fees anyway.
unjustly raise your fees.
Mhm.
They don't get their individual fees
No, I
anyway
know that,
unless
but
they're
they
an
always say,
enterprise
look,
fund.
we brought in this much money.
But it,
So a new email will go out, or a re-forwarding of the other one, but also then including quoting the law to the other departments? Okay. Can we just skip back, sorry, to the streetlights? Mike, would you have that draft letter for us when, to look at, can you, by our next meeting?
sure, before then.
Okay.
Uh,
I just want to put a date to it. Okay.
I can,
We can't talk about it collectively then, until the meeting.
And nothing prohibits the board from having a motion and a vote imploring our senator and representatives regarding the ability to, you know, choose the hospital insurance and so forth, and other things.
On the issue with the ABCC. Okay. All right, are there any other member issues? Cari? No? Update?
I don't really have anything that we haven't discussed.
I think we covered
Anything?
everything.
I was trying to think of anything that didn't come up in the meeting. Nothing came to mind.
No, because we just covered streetlights and member
Yeah.
issues.
You know, interestingly, on the ABCC, they've created a lot of uncertainty with this process. They withdrew the Blue Book, which was their Bible for
What
the
are they
license
using?
process. What's that?
What are they using?
Nothing. The website,
What's that?
the ABCC Blue Book.
Yeah.
Because I had a question on this particular license application.
Yeah.
Because it asked specifically whether the person had to be, was a Massachusetts resident. I said, well, why would you have to be a Massachusetts resident to have a business in Massachusetts? So I said, I'll take a look at the Blue Book. No more Blue Book. I don't know if that'll create a problem or not, but it certainly shouldn't.
Yeah. Well, perhaps the reason they want to know if they're Massachusetts resident is because one of the requirements for any state license is that you'll be current on your taxes.
Well,
But of course, you can work for the state and not pay your taxes and still keep your job at the state, okay? But if you wanna sell hot dogs for a living, and you haven't paid your property taxes, we don't let you sell hot dogs to feed your family.
I had a couple of questions. Go ahead, Judy.
Sorry, I'll go after you.
This was in one of the multiple conversations we had on the conservation restriction. And because of the location of the turtles that we love now so much, you had mentioned that you would reach out to National Grid about how they're going to do the vegetation management and spraying it by hand. Actually, that
Well,
might come up at our meeting.
It
I-
did come
I
up in
can
our
ask-
meeting, but that
talked to
So-
Grid.
It's a moot
But that
point
doesn't
now.
apply now
Okay,
because
right.
the
We didn't really
conservation
follow up with
restriction is
Grid
not underneath the
because
grid.
Okay.
the restriction was not underneath the power line. But that may be a concern. I mean, if the board generally wants to.
That's a concern for
It's a
the
concern for the
water.
well field, and
That is a
perhaps we
concern for the
should
well field.
ask them to hand cut along that section. So,
We don't care if they hand cut.
It's a spraying.
It's the spraying of the chemicals for the.
Chemicals.
well, that's the
water
alternative.
aquifer.
The spraying is used to control weeds, and the alternative is to use mechanical or hand cutting
Or
rather
use-
than defoliants.
Or use pesticide safe.
I don't know if there's anything that, I can't think of anything that would kill a tree that I'd want in my water
Safe.
supply.
Well, that was a question that I'd had. And we had talked about the winter maintenance policy a couple meetings ago, looking at the deeds. Cari, I think that was your suggestion, to determine if the roads are public or private. And Mike, at one, you had said that you would need to see who would have the bandwidth to do that, and just want an update on that.
To looking at the deeds, to research them. We just right now have what Ben had produced and what Kelly had produced, and right now neither of them, I don't think, have the time to do any research on deeds.
I missed the beginning of this.
We had talked about the winter maintenance policy, because there's the
Oh,
October
okay.
24th, 1957 date in
To
there.
see
I think
who-
it's October 24th.
When they were actually
Just to
turned
see when
over.
they were actually turned over, to determine which truly are private and which are truly public.
My recommendation was you actually go back and do the deed research.
Right.
Because, following the deed, although it's labor intensive for all those pieces of property, although looking at a sampling on each road may give you an indication, but still, you're talking about, you don't know how far
Well-
back or how many deeds you're gonna have to
Right.
pull.
But
But it
mean,
can
the
be
deed
all
doesn't
done.
always show you whether a road is public or private.
No, but it'll tell you whether there were any encumbrances, or it'll tell you when the sewer line came through. Those are indications on your deeds.
I don't know that Ben has the ability either to research deeds. I could do it.
Anybody can.
Well, there's a learning curve.
Well, outside of the learning curve, it's, it can be integrated with the laptop, it just has to go to masslandrecords.com. It's not that hard.
I'll try and do some of it this,
Can we task
Can it
the
be-
assessor's office? They do it all the time.
yeah, well,
Maybe if we break
they're
up
busy
a
also.
street,
Sort of chunk it out, yeah. Is it possible
You
to
know,
chunk it
how
out
many
into our
streets are we looking
questions?
at? We're looking only at, right now, we're only looking at, 3 streets? Are the main ones?
Are you
Talking
talking?
about those old ones, right?
Yeah.
So, could we give one to, one to the clerk's office, one to the assessor's office, and,
I suppose we could give them to, let me see if the assessor's office can handle it all. I think they would probably do it most efficiently. But there will be others that are out there. The one we discussed, well, I guess we're gonna determine if that's a private road, but that has been there a long time.
I just wanted to bring it up for an update on it. And then, Peter, you had brought up on our January 31st meeting website needing maintenance. What's going on?
What's that?
What's going on with it, the website?
Site maintenance?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Are there still, Well, because there
Are
are
there
some
problems?
pages of departments where not everyone is listed, not all the contact information is
Those,
there.
those updates we were able to do. Those
Okay.
updates, yeah, as far as research. and
Well, is it
new
the
companies
responsibility of
and
every department to maintain their
No.
own page?
No.
Kelly and
They don't have
Tracy do the,
They don't have access?
No, there's like Kelly and Tracy have access to it, which
Right.
is a safer way to do it
Right.
for the website. You,
Right.
But could we do this, though? Could we
don't
require
want
that
any
each
curves, you don't want them
department
to
inform
crash
us, go, you know,
Yeah, they
go
do.
on and look at their
As long as
pages?
they do, you're right. That's what
Mm.
the departments need to be reminded that, you know, to check out the website, let us know the updates and so forth. But we can certainly send a reminder out to them and let them know. As far as researching a new company to go in and, you
do the
know,
work, that's.
redo a whole new website,
there's no
It's too
budget
much money.
for it right now, right?
We don't have money.
Well, and the website survey that you had forwarded was interesting, but there were no dollars associated with it. I'm like,
right,
how much did it cost? It's great that everyone is going with
virtual.
who they're picking, yeah, exactly, but
Yeah.
how much did it cost them?
I mean, there were a number of vendors that I, talked to at the MMA conference, and the money wasn't there. I mean, it's expensive. There's some really nice packages out there, but they all have a cost associated with them.
Be this year.
And they all sink or swim based on somebody being current with
Yes.
putting in the information and updating things.
Yes.
And that's where the time is.
So, is the best way to approach it then, and I'm sorry, Cari, I think I only heard half of what you were saying about the departments, or Peter, was it you? The departments being responsible for reviewing their pages?
Reviewing their pages to make sure
Okay.
they're updated. Like, for
And then
instance, I
what-
was just on our page, and, I mean, it's minor, but next to each of our names, you have the year that our election
You don't
is
have
up.
a year,
I don't
and
have
Jay
a
doesn't have a
I
year.
don't have a year.
I have a year.
Jay
Okay.
doesn't
Jay
have
doesn't have a year.
That's
You don't have a year.
right, Jay and,
I don't have
right,
a year and Jay doesn't
doesn't
have
have
a
a
year.
year.
So maybe should it be something that's looked at every 2 months? And they give feedback to every month?
Quarterly?
Yeah, maybe
And we-
quarterly?
you do
But
try
again,
to-
at some point, like everything else, you have to look at it
Yeah.
and say, yeah, this is nice,
I agree. Mm.
but
What's
what's
the
the
value?
time and the money involved, and is it worth it?
Well, at least most definitely having everyone's accurate contact information in there
Yes.
is key.
Yes,
Definitely key.
yeah, but that doesn't take a lot of time.
No. Well, and it's already completed, correct?
Well, some of the departments don't even list the members, and I can't think off of hand which department I was looking at. I mean, not department, like a committee.
Well, the
Where they
building
only
committee
list-
doesn't,
Yeah,
it
it's
just,
the
just gives a
SBC.
chairman,
Yeah.
and it doesn't give a phone number.
Yes,
It
that's
just
who
gives
it
the town
was,
hall
yes.
phone number.
That's right.
Mhm.
Gives just John Higgins.
That
Matter
should
of fact,
be
it even
updated.
says, it just says John Higgins. It
Yeah.
doesn't even have Dan DeVoe up there.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know, does,
It should be updated at this
Mhm.
point.
do all of them have public phone numbers?
Okay.
I mean, people have some right and expectation to privacy if they don't want their phone number published.
We made
Well,
a rule that you
if-
shouldn't run for
Well,
boards or
maybe as
committees
my,
if you weren't
we should
willing
do
to
that,
be.
I don't know if we did.
We
We
did, well, I-
didn't.
we
did?
did.
Okay.
We did.
We didn't actually take a
Unofficially-
motion on it, but we agreed that yes, anyone who wanted to become a member of a board or committee had to provide their
Right.
telephone
Yeah,
Right.
number.
if you want privacy, fine, but don't ask for
Don't
a
ask
public
for it.
job.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, it's hard enough to get volunteers as it is.
Right. Okay.
Um,
Anyone else
I
have any
understand them.
questions? Carrie?
Yes, actually, if we could just talk, because looking at it, we're not gonna meet again before the warrant closes. And, is there any warrant articles? Because what's gonna happen is, we're gonna vote on those, we're not gonna have a chance to review anything before then. So as far as anything that the board is gonna sponsor,
Well, certainly there's gonna be the budget article, which, the budget that the board would sponsor. We were going to discuss, and maybe we should have a meeting to discuss it, for example, a debt exclusion for some heavy-duty equipment for DPW, particularly plow trucks, since they're, I don't know how else we would manage to finance the trucks without a debt exclusion over, say, a 10-year period. So we have discussed that. There's also the rezoning of Blanchard. So those are,
Who's working on that? Is somebody working on that?
yes,
Who?
David. David
Okay.
has been working on it.
on which
And
one.
what's the status of
The
it?
rezoning Blanchard?
Do we have anything to look at yet?
We had an
We'll get you
article
something.
from
We had a
us.
draft article, and I think we need to philosophically see how you want to approach it as a broad article for the whole residence district, which we could simply do as an amendment to the Residence A, having allowing some category of businesses in
Just A?
Residence A. Or any. Or we can simply focus on the building and that environs and do that strip.
So it sounds like we need to have
Overlay.
another meeting then. Not to cut you off,
I
but
mean,
it sounds like we need to have another meeting.
if we're gonna discuss articles, we probably
Just do that.
shouldn't do it as,
Well, we can discuss them, we just can't act on it.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
discuss anything you want.
Mhm. So,
The advantage of limiting it to the Blanchard site is that there's less apt to be opposition.
correct.
If you have others that people don't want.
Correct.
Right, if you limit it just to Blanchard, your chances are having opposition is greater than if you do it at.
No.
No.
If you limit it to Blanchard,
Yeah,
your
but we
chance of having
can't, then it's zone spot, it's spot zoning.
Well, you
Well,
can
got a
put an
business,
overlay
right?
district
You got a house
along
and a
that.
business Anyway,
You have,
at Blanchard.
What?
right,
You
but
got
it's
a
spot
house,
zoning.
then you got a car business.
You have to connect all the way to, but those are grandfathered, those are not
Yeah,
technically,
yeah.
you have to connect
But then they're
into,
aging.
you either
So
have to go all
back
the way up
to
or
a
you have to
meeting?
come all the way back. You have to rezone that whole area.
when should we schedule that for?
Well, it closes on 11, why can't you just meet on the 14th?
We already have a meeting
We
scheduled
have
for
a
the
meeting on the
14th.
14th, they're closed. We have to have the articles.
Our own articles to be able to review.
Right, but we just have to have the basis of which ones we want in there, and then we vote on them on the 14th. But to make sure that they're included by the 11th, we can get into the, I don't think we need to have another
meeting,
meeting.
okay.
No,
Just as
just
long
Well, why
as
don't-
the,
Okay.
Yeah.
because the
Well,
way they're worded,
David and I will submit the articles that we feel should be in there, and any board members, if you have things
We
that you
always
would
start
like to
there anyway.
submit, send it in, and then the board can either include it or exclude it.
Okay. Does that work for you, Peter? Okay.
how much, I mean, my only, the debt exclusion for the, I mean, how much money are you talking for the
Forget it.
DPW stuff?
Forget it.
What?
I'm not gonna pay any more taxes.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question.
I gave you the answer.
How about I entertain a motion to,
Executive
So,
session.
Is there anything,
Executive
but is
session.
there, think for a second though, guys, is there any other basic warrant article that we want to include? My recommendation is this, for the, because of the problems we've had with the layout of the streets, should the Board of Selectmen sponsor the layout language for those streets that we anticipate coming forward at the Springtown meeting? We can always pass over them if they're not ready, but should we draft the language for those versus having them as citizen petitions?
Well, they've always come in as citizen petitions.
They've always come in as
You've never
petitions.
taken that approach where you would, because it's not a requirement that these streets go to town meeting.
Okay, so,
Well,
let's talk about Cedar Woods. So it's gonna be citizen petitions for those layouts, even though the intent is by
Well, I
eminent
think-
domain taking?
But I think.
no, that would have to be,
Yeah,
That
an
has to be a
applicant's
board of
asking,
selectmen.
correct, an applicant is asking the selectmen to sponsor that article, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So, but there were 3 separate sections, there's 3 separate warrant articles that are needed under that, and the lineup of them, I think, is
Yeah.
crucial. The first one has to be the taking,
Right.
because
Well,
the language also has to be,
two, why three? You need to take it, and then you need to make it a public way.
right,
What would be the third?
You just
I
think
thought
of
there
the
was a
intent to
third.
lay
And
out.
lay it out,
It's
intent
the
to lay
layout.
out.
That
That's
was
right.
just
The layout isn't done by town meeting.
okay.
But Knappet's gonna draft
They
the
need to be-
language,
Right.
right?
This is my concern,
Yeah.
just to express it, that because of the way the warrant happens,
Mhm.
okay? We don't have control over which articles, do we have control over which ones are gonna get passed over? What's gonna happen is we're
Yes,
gonna,
because you vote to include them in the warrant, it's your.
we vote to include them.
Yeah.
Okay, so there would be no way where the town says no to the eminent domain taking, but yet the road gets still laid out. You understand? Because they're
Yeah,
two
but with
separate
that,
warrant
with,
articles.
within that, you
You
can't
need
do,
to make
you
them-
need both. And people will have to be, notified at town meeting that you can't have one without the other. and that-
Exactly, that's my point, right, that the
Exactly.
language, that
They're
everybody
contingent
understands, you
upon each
can't have
other.
one without the other. Right,
Exactly.
They're a pair.
Exactly.
Right, if you don't pass one, you can't
Mhm.
just all of a sudden decide you're gonna pass two and backdoor it.
Well,
So,
if you don't
just
take the
caution on those
property,
language.
you can't accept it as a public way, because you don't own it.
Yeah.
Right.
You would have to, you'd have to do a taking, or
Not yours
typically when
too.
we, typically in the article, we accept
But we're
it.
gonna vote to lay it out, so it's gonna be on there for acceptances
Yeah.
of a public way, because we've laid it out. Assume,
Yeah.
with the idea that it's gonna be
But that's
eminent domain
okay.
taking, but at the eminent domain taking fails, that warrant article is still standing there,
But-
laid out.
Yeah, but that's like
can
with
be
all,
voted on
well,
separately.
that's like with that, and that's okay, that's typical, because that would happen with some of your other streets, at the last hour, nothing didn't come in.
Right.
okay? Prior to this past town meeting, because that was a little different situation, but if you vote your intention to lay out, you vote the layout, what happens at town meeting, happens at town meeting, and if it doesn't pass, it. But,
Just
good,
wanna
good
make sure.
points.
You
Absolutely.
can't accept it as a public way if it's not public property, and if the eminent domain article failed, it wouldn't be public property.
Okay, so we anticipate having those street acceptances.
Yeah,
We are not planning to do any other street acceptances. Those are gonna fly as citizen petitions. Then we'll have the budget. There'll be a debt exclusion, which would be sponsored by the finance director. We're not
Okay.
sponsoring that, correct?
A debt exclusion for what?
DPW.
We're not sponsoring that.
No.
Well, wait a minute
An
now.
article for
Wait a minute
Blanchard.
now. What, how does it get on the warrant?
Well, if it's sponsored by,
Remember before we
The
went through, the
director
one speaking to it is the one that
Finance.
sponsored, we would
By
be
David.
putting it on his
David doesn't
behalf.
have the authority to put an article on the warrant,
oh, so we do have to put it on, it's from us.
huh?
So then it's from the
gotta be
board.
From us.
Mhm.
Yeah. If we say, no, it doesn't go on the warrant.
yeah,
No.
he'll prepare
No,
something
wait,
for you.
he's
yeah.
preparing it and we're
Yeah.
putting it on, but
Yeah.
under the sponsored area, remember we went through this before? We
Yeah.
didn't want
Right.
them all to say Board of Selectmen, we wanted to
Why are
say
we
who
putting
was
it on if
speaking
we
to.
don't support it?
It was a matter of clarity is what
You
we were
don't have to
trying to
support it.
do.
I mean, it's, you have to put on an article that's sponsored by a multi-member,
And what's the multi-member board?
board. None.
That's
So you
right.
don't have to put it on.
That's right, so why are we putting on it if we're not in favor of it?
You don't. You don't
You
have
don't
to
have
put it
to.
on.
We're gonna vote to,
We're gonna vote it on the 14th.
On the
These are
14th
just
of whether
things
or
that we
not-
wanted to
These are
see
things
seeing
that are
at the close of the
pending that
warrant.
might
Right.
come up.
Okay.
that
They're
you
pending
will-
Discussed it as an option, as
Right.
as a way to
Yeah.
get
All
equipment.
right, okay,
If the board is not supportive, the board's not supportive, it won't go on.
okay.
okay, so rezoning of Blanchard, the budget, Cedar Woods, and debt exclusion for DPW equipment, is that correct?
Yes.
Am I
Do
missing
we,
anything else?
is there any, are we anticipating anything from the,
I'm only
from
thinking
the
this
schools?
From the schools?
Yeah, we
received this. They passed a budget that was over their allotted
They,
amount.
it was a draft budget that they provided, right? And I believe that there's still negotiations are going on in regard to, the,
Revenue sharing.
thank you, I was gonna say
sharing.
profit sharing, I'm like, no, that's not right. Revenue sharing.
Okay, so that's still
So-
up in the air.
Mhm.
Anything else?
We've also have a request from the building inspector to put an article on to amend the zoning bylaws to adopt the new flood maps,
Okay.
which should be a ministerial function. I mean,
How often do they change those maps?
It's
Not that
gotta-
often.
Yeah, not that often, so.
And is that an article that, this is from Glenn?
yes,
And is he writing the
No, it will come.
we'll write it.
article? Okay,
We'll write it for him.
okay.
I don't, hold on.
Is
Flood
there,
maps?
is there anything else from any of the other departments?
But failure to adopt them, I think, might affect our flood insurance rates.
Okay.
Anything from library trustees? Anything from senior center?
One petition from, for the town.
Yeah, Mr. Fortner forwarded a petition earlier, the warrant wasn't open at the time, to amend the charter to only allow ratepayers to vote on town meeting articles having to do
For
with
water and sewer.
for water or sewer.
Ooh,
Mhm.
Interesting.
that's an
That's
interesting
gonna be
one.
interesting.
I just don't know logistically how we do that.
Yeah.
How we do that, we issue a separate card.
But who does it go to? Who's a ratepayer?
Yeah.
Who's a ratepayer? Whoever lives at the address that gets water.
Well, the town of Uxbridge is a ratepayer, because we pay for water here at the town hall.
But that's an article that he's already written it and.
It's
it's
already
already
written.
added,
It's
so-
a petition.
So that's gonna
That's
be a
fine.
problem.
Petition. I'm just saying there'll be clarification that could be given.
Then the only other one that might be a possibility for an article would, this would come back, remember we discussed this?
Oh.
Because of inadequate advertising, and it's to amend the appendix A
Oh.
table of the zoning bylaws.
Yep.
And it is all administerial, but it might be just something that we might have to.
Is that the thing on the life science one?
No. That was Article 4.
Yeah.
And is
Yeah.
that a citizen petition as well, or?
No, it's just something that.
No, just clarifications.
Clean
It's
up.
not really substantive.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a short, then there's not a lot of warrant articles
Might
then.
be
Well,
another
you
street.
wait.
Street.
Yeah.
Right.
They come out of the.
There's still
woodwork.
time. We
Yeah.
just set the date for opening and closing it.
And then there's a whole slew of standard articles that just are on there that are necessary for running the town each year. Reestablishing the revolving funds, things like that.
Oh, speaking of that, thank you for bringing that up. Does the Board of Selectmen, as far as the cable funds, or are we gonna wait until this contract is finalized as far as the cable monies? Because we originally, back in January, the goal of the board was to come up with a process to expend some of those monies based on, a projected forecast of revenues and expenditures for a 3-year period, which Barry hasn't been back for that. So is there something along those lines that we want to be prepared for?
Speaking of that, when did that become a department? It didn't start out as a department.
No, it didn't, because
Cable?
Barry
No.
technically wasn't a department head.
It was just David Lane was paid a stipend by United, United Video, or whatever it was. And that was it. And then we hired Barry, and he replaced David, and then all of a sudden, I see we have a department head. And I don't remember seeing any reorganization by a town manager that created some new
I guess I
department.
never
Defining
questioned
it
the
in
fact
the
that he was a
charter.
department head.
No, actually, Jill Myers didn't consider him a department head. She used to make all the decisions for cable. That was my
She did.
understanding.
She did.
That
Yeah.
he reported to her, and he was
did.
her employee, and he was not a department head in her eyes.
Nope.
She used to make the calls.
She handled it.
So I'll entertain a motion for us to adjourn and move into executive session for the purpose.
We're not adjourning, we're just
All right,
going
sorry.
into executive session.
Moving to executive session,
No new business after.
no new business
For
afterwards.
the purpose of,
Discussion of the SEIU Step 3 grievance and the charter contract
And also fire,
negotiations and the fire, and the Uxbridge Fire Department
union negotiations.
union negotiations. Thank you.
Okay. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Desilets, aye.
Pittman, aye.
Robertson, aye.
Bagdasarian, aye.